Colors, honor guard, present arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so good.
If you guys are just joining us now on Fox 5 Live, my name is Molly. I'm here in Washington, D.C., and we're going right to this scene. It's happening live on Capitol Hill right now in the west front of the Capitol lawn here, the west front of the Capitol building itself. This is the 36th annual Peace Officers Memorial. It's all part of National Police Week, which kicks off today on Monday, May 15th. And President Trump is here to give remarks. And this is a ceremony of sorts that will, like I said, kick off this week in memoriam of law enforcement who have been killed on the job, fallen officers, and honoring their service. So again, this is the 36th annual Peace Officers Memorial Ceremony. Right following the ceremony, there will be a wreath laying as well. And this is an annual event here. It happens right here at the Capitol. And President Trump is about to make a few remarks. So we're going to keep it here on this feed. You're watching this live on Fox 5 Live. I'll jump in here and there just to update you guys on what you're watching. But for now, enjoy this ceremony.
Ready, cut.
I will now call on Phil Wiggins, chaplain of the National FOP, who will deliver the invocation.
Please join me in prayer. Father, we thank you for your presence here today. Father, I love you, and on behalf of we are thankful for this day that has been designated as a day to honor the men and women in law enforcement that made that ultimate sacrifice, and others that were seriously injured performing their duties. As we on stage look over the families and friends and co-workers that are here grieving and hurting, we ask that your Holy Spirit bring comfort and peace to those that mourn today. Your word tells us in the Psalm that even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. We pray that you guide us as a nation, that we humble ourselves and pray and seek your face and turn from our wicked ways. Then will you hear from heaven and forgive our sin and heal our land. Father, we pray too today for the president of our great nation, President Donald Trump, and his family and the national leaders, and our national FOP president, Chet Canterbury, and also the FOP Executive Board, as we continue to work toward a better and safer law enforcement across this country. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Colors, honor guard, right shoulder, arms. Colors, order, arms. Parade, rest.
Please be seated. It is indeed my honor and privilege to welcome all of you, my fellow officers, our law enforcement families, and our distinguished guests to this 36th annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service. I would like to begin this morning by introducing our guests who have joined us on the dais this year. Beginning on my right, please welcome Frank Larkin, the Senate Sergeant at Arms. Next to him, I have Craig Floyd, Chairman of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. And Ms. Brenda Donner, Concerns of Police Survivors President. We have the architect of the Capitol with us, Stephen Ayers. Thank you. And a very special welcome to our chief of our host agency, Matt Verderosa of the U.S. Capitol Police. We're very pleased to have with us this year Tom Snapanakis, the president of the Canadian Police Association and the chairman of the International Council of Police Representative Associations, representing over 3 million police officers in the world. Thank you, Tom. Please welcome Pete Marino, Chief Public Affairs and Communication Officers for Miller Coors, one of our most corporate and long-term generous partners. Thank you. Next, we're very pleased to have with us today Ms. Kelly Pickler, who will perform in just a few minutes. Thank you. We're extremely pleased to have with us again the Minority Whip of the U.S. House of Representatives, Steny Hoyer. Thank you, Mr. Hoyer. We are also joined by the Acting Director of the U.S. Marshal Service, David Harlow. Linda Henney, the National President of the FOP Auxiliary, is with us, and she'll be welcoming you to the service in a few minutes. Turning now to my far left, please welcome Paul Irving, the Sergeant at Arms from the United States House of Representatives. Next, it's an honor to have Tom Homan, Acting Director for U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Pleased to have Acting Commissioner for Customs and Border Protection, Kevin McCallum, and Tom Brandon from ATF with us today. Sadly, all of these agencies lost officers in the line of duty in 2016. We're very fortunate to have with us Tom Bossert, Assistant to the President for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism, who is joining us for what I believe is his first memorial service. Thank you for being here. It's indeed an honor to welcome our good friend Elaine Chao, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation. She's attended many of these services and delivered the keynote address at one of these events. Welcome back, Madam Secretary. We also like to welcome another longtime friend of the FOP, Labor Secretary Alex Acosta. Thank you for coming, Alex. Please welcome your Homeland Security Secretary, John Kelly, who is attending our service for the first time. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'm also very grateful and honored to welcome the U.S. Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. You've always been a friend of law enforcement when you were a senator, and I'm sure you'll continue as our Attorney General. Thank you. I'm very honored to welcome to this event the Vice President of the United States, Michael Pence. President Henney will be introducing the Vice President for comments in a few moments. And finally, it's my great honor and privilege to have with us the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, brothers and sisters of law enforcement, family and friends of our fallen heroes. Welcome to the 36th Annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service. In 1962, Congress authorized President John F. Kennedy to proclaim May 15th of each year as Peace Officers Memorial Day, a day in which to honor the brave law enforcement officers who proudly wore the uniform, who daily served their communities in which they lived and worked, and who ultimately made the supreme sacrifice in performance of their duties. The proclamation was signed October 1st, 1962. 20 years later, on May 15th, 1982, the first National Peace Officers Memorial Service was held in Senate Park, honoring 91 law enforcement officers from around the country who had given their lives in the line of duty. Today, we honor 234 officers as their families, friends, and coworkers gather in this place to celebrate the memory of those whose lives were taken in an instant while serving and protecting the citizens of our great nation. Honor is not a word the law enforcement community takes lightly. It's about character. It's about stuff you're made of, the code you live by. Honor is a way of being. The courageous heroes we honor here today could not fake their commitment to the citizens of their community. They took seriously their obligation and responsibility to serve and protect. While we honor these 234 officers for the hero we knew them to be, the loved ones, the friends, and coworkers are remembering them for the person they were. Death leaves a heartache no one can heal, but love leaves a memory that no one can steal. President Calvin Coolidge once stated, "No person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been for the reward for what he gave." These 234 brave men and women gave their all. They laid down their life to protect and serve the family, friends, and coworkers and public who are here today to honor them. May our heroes rest in peace. May God bless the families they leave behind. May God watch over the officers protecting our streets and communities today. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you. I am honored to have the opportunity to introduce our next speaker. Mike Pence spent nearly a decade as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. As a member of the Committee on the Judiciary, he was not only a key supporter of law enforcement officers, but was also a champion for law enforcement families. His commitment to keeping his fellow citizens safe led to his being elected as the governor of Indiana in 2012. Now, of course, he serves in an even greater role. So please help me welcome the 48th Vice President of the United States, Michael R. Pence.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much. Beautiful work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Mr. President, members of the Cabinet, members of Congress, honored guests and dignitaries, members of the law enforcement community, and the precious families of our fallen. It is National Police Week, and on behalf of the President of the United States of America, today it is my privilege to welcome so many courageous men and women of law enforcement, and especially the families of the fallen who are gathered here to mark the 36th National Peace Officers Memorial Service. To the leadership of the Fraternal Order of Police, to all those who stand on the thin blue line of our law enforcement community, police, sheriffs, detectives, deputies, To all who have traveled from near and far to join in this hallowed annual ceremony, we are honored by your presence, and our nation's capital is better for you being here. Every day, each one of you walks out the door of your homes to protect and serve our families at the risk of not returning to yours. And today, be assured, you have the gratitude of your president, this entire administration, and national government, and you have the gratitude of every American. As we acknowledge your service, we gather to honor the sacrifice, and we trust to comfort the families of members of our law enforcement community who lost their lives in the line of duty. It's said that no greater love has a man than this, that he should lay down his life for his friends. It's also said that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and that's our prayer for each of you today. Sacrifice and memory is what brings us to this place every year. 1962, President John F. Kennedy declared this day as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and this week around the country will be National Police Week. And every year since 1982, members of our law enforcement community, their families.
If you guys are just joining us here on Fox 5 Live, you're watching live Vice President Mike Pence make some remarks at the 36th annual Peace Officers Memorial for Law Enforcement. You can see there he's joined by President Trump, who will also make some remarks. And in the right-hand corner of the bottom of your screen, you are looking at live aerials of an overturned charter bus that's on I-95 about 40 miles north of Baltimore. This happened at about 10 a.m. It is still unclear if there are injuries that have been reported, but it looks like a sort of a devastating scene here. We're going to keep these aerials up so that you can be updated on that. But emergency crews were dispatched to that scene. That's all live pictures for you. And then again, in the upper left-hand corner right here, you're seeing public officials make their remarks at the Memorial for Law Enforcement. Take a listen.
A solemn tribute to the late Sheriff Deputy Carl Coons. I'm confident today that millions of Americans stand with us in spirit and are breathing a silent prayer for your service and your families. We honor the memory of our heroic fallen in tributes like this across this nation all this week. But we also honor their sacrifice by ensuring that those who protect and serve have the support and the resources and the training that the men and women of law enforcement deserve. As those in uniform across this country already know, President Trump's highest priority is the safety and security of the American people. This president knows in his heart that to make America safe again, we must also restore the tradition of respect and honor that is owed to every member of the law enforcement community in America. President Trump stands with the men and women of law enforcement without apology, and he always will. On this National Police Week, may God himself comfort the families of the fallen, here and those looking on. May God bless each of you as you protect and serve, and may God bless the United States of America.
Please join me in welcoming Kelly Pickler, who will perform one of her
live
songs.
on the west front of the Capitol building, the west front steps, and we are about to hear President Trump make his remarks for this annual ceremony. Now, it's all part of the official National Police Week, and some of those events actually kicked off last week, some ceremonies and candlelighting and things like that. This week is the official week. It starts today to make this official ceremony with the public officials here, and we'll hear from President Trump.
I know a place to lay my head when I'm only the to my soul, a sanctuary where I can go. You are my wailing wall. I lay my prayers beneath the stones of your blessed love. When troubles weigh, I hear you call, and I run to you, my wailing wall. Don't understand the ways of this world, but I mourn the absence of an innocent girl. And I know nothing can cushion the fall like the love of a friend you can always lean on. You are my wailing wall, and I lay my prayers beneath the stones of your blessed love. When troubles weigh, I hear you call, and I run to you, my wailing wall. You are my wailing wall. I lay my prayers beneath the stones of your blessed love. You never stray, you never fall. I run to you, my wailing wall. I run to you, my wailing wall. God bless you. Thank you so much.
As president of the National FOP, it's my honor, on behalf of the 332,000 members, to welcome you to this 36th Annual Peace Officers Memorial Service. We are here today on the lawn of the U.S. Capitol, an iconic symbol known around the world as the seat of our government. There is no more fitting location than our Capitol to honor our heroes. In a few minutes, we'll hear comments from the President, but I just want to acknowledge him as he, in his short time in office, has let America know that our law enforcement officers are important and that their lives matter, and that we need to protect them as much as possible. Thank you, Mr. President. Harry Truman once said, "America was not built on fear. America was built on courage, on imagination, and unbeatable determination to do the job at hand." I submit to you that the heroes we are here today to honor understood that determination, and they performed the job at hand. They did not perform their duty for praise. They did not perform their duty for admiration, nor did they perform their duty to earn the title hero. They did their jobs because that is what we do as America's law enforcement officers and what we're called to do. That is why we call them heroes. For answering the call to do a heroic act without regard for their safety, the men and women that we honor would be the last to use the word hero. They would just use the word cop. Law enforcement officers recognize that the safety and preservation of peace are necessary for the people to have pursuit of happiness, life, and liberty. These heroes would all say that their most proud moment was when they swore an oath to serve and protect, and that they took that as their most important task. President Abraham Lincoln once said, "I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep on doing so until the end." These officers did just that. They did their best until the end. The memories that we as loved ones have for them will last forever, and the contribution they made to our great country will never be forgotten. Their names are not only engraved on the National Peace Officers Memorial Wall, they are engraved on the fabric of America and in our hearts. To you, the survivors, I say that our thoughts and prayers are always with you. Our resolve to go on is made stronger by knowing that while we have your backs, you have ours. You will always be advocates for your law enforcement family, and we count on you to provide your prayers and your well wishes to us as we go about performing our duty. The thin blue line will never be broken, and the memory of your loved ones will remain in our hearts forever. God bless you, the families of all of our heroes, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you. I now feel like the luckiest police officer in the history of this country because it's my honor to introduce our next speaker. Mr. President, it's a great privilege to honor and to have you here to honor the families of our fallen heroes. It has been a difficult time for law enforcement in our country, as you know. More officers are being targeted for violence simply because of their uniform. In pledging to serve and protect, they willingly place themselves in harm's way. But now, all too often, harm is seeking them out, and they find themselves in the crosshairs of individuals consumed with hatred for police and who are determined to kill them. Mr. President, on the campaign trail, you often spoke of your support for law enforcement officers, and you made a commitment to help us make America and our officers on the beat safe again. In your first days of office, you began to deliver on that promise, demonstrating that you'll be a partner and not a critic of our nation's law enforcement officers. Every officer needs a partner on the beat. Mr. President, we see you as that partner in the years to come. We appreciate your leadership, and we are so very grateful to have you with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, please help me welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you, everybody. Wow. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Chuck. That was so nice. That was above and beyond. That's the way I'm going to be with you, too. And it's a great honor. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to address America's heroes on this most solemn occasion. Words cannot express the depths of our gratitude, but I hope that our actions will show you how deeply we care and how strongly we feel about protecting those who protect us. America stands strong with our men and women in blue. Believe me, we stand strong together. I want to recognize Jim Pasco, Linda Henney, Chaplain Wiggins, and everyone at the Fraternal Order of Police for all that you do to protect the law enforcement of this country and all of our communities. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. As long as I'm president, you will always find an open door to the White House. and you've already found it, believe me. Mr. Vice President, Cabinet Secretaries, and members of Congress, we are gathered here today at the U.S. Capitol to pay tribute to those brave law enforcement officers who gave their lives in the line of duty. On this Police Officers' Memorial Day, we thank God for having blessed so many of us with such incredible heroes, and we pledge our solidarity with their families and loved ones, and many of those great families and survivors are here with us today, and I'd love you to stand up. Families and survivors, what great, incredible people. And your loved ones are looking down on you right now, believe me, and they're very proud. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Whatever you need, we are here for you, and we are praying for you. As I look out today at this amazing assembly of police, detectives, marshals, and sheriffs, I want to make all of you remember and heed this promise. I will always support the incredible men and women of law enforcement as much as you have always supported me. And you did. Big league. Your presence here reminds us all of what is at stake on this sacred day of remembrance. Each May during Police Week, new names of fallen police officers are added to the National Law Enforcement Memorial. This year, 394 brave souls joined the over 20,000 men and women who gave up their lives in the line of duty to protect us. The names of these heroes are not only carved into that wall, but carved into the hearts of the American people. And by the way, the American people love you more than you will ever know. I can tell you that. Though your loved ones left us much too soon, the memory of their courage will live on forever. To see so many names together is to gain only a small glimpse of the debt America owes to those who protect our cities and police on our streets. We are privileged this morning to be joined by families of the fallen, to whom we owe that ultimate loyalty. So many people, even back here. Please know that you do not grieve alone. Though we cannot fathom the depths of your loss, nor fully appreciate the bond that forms in the precinct and between partners on the beat, your sadness is left and felt by all of us. Every drop of blood spilled from our heroes in blue is a wound inflicted upon the whole country. And every heartache known by your families in law enforcement is a sorrow shared by the entire family of the American nation. No one asked these selfless men and women to enlist in this righteous cause, or to enroll as foot soldiers in the eternal struggle against crime and violence. They joined the cause because their hearts were big and full of amazing courage. They joined because they cared so deeply for the innocent and helpless and forgotten. They put on the uniform because they believed to the very core of their souls that it was their mission in life to serve and to protect. As the Bible tells us, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. The names and stories on that wall are each a testament to this pure and unselfish love. And that's what it is, pure and unselfish love. And it is our duty as a people and as a nation to prove worthy of their sacrifice. And that begins with showing our police the appreciation they have earned 1,000 times over. Living in New York, I gained a deep appreciation and lasting admiration for law enforcement. Thousands of people are living and enjoying life today in New York who otherwise would be gone because our great police fought to bring safety to our streets and our communities. The entire world witnessed the heroism of New York's finest when they gave their lives on 9/11. I was there and sacrificed so much in that brutal, horrible aftermath. Now, as president, my highest duty is to keep America safe. We will keep America safe. And included in safe means safe from crimes, safe from terrorism, and safe from all enemies, foreign and domestic. At the center of that duty is the requirement to ensure that our law enforcement personnel are given the tools and resources they need to do their jobs and to come home to their families safely. You are the thin blue line between civilization and chaos. You come from every community and all walks of life. You are mothers and fathers and sons and daughters. You rush into unknown danger, risking your lives for people you have never met, people you don't know, performing your duty under the most difficult conditions, and often without any thanks at all. Because you do not hear nearly enough. I want you to know that patriotic Americans of all backgrounds truly support and love our police. And a very sad thing is that many of today's politicians don't want to say that, don't want to talk about that, because it's not politically correct, or they think it might hurt them with the voters. I will say it, and I will talk about it proudly. I will make it the personal priority of my administration to ensure that our police are finally treated fairly, with honor and respect that they deserve. To all Americans watching this event today, next time you see a cop on the beat, take a moment to say two wonderful words which they so readily deserve. Thank you. Thank you. As you all know, much too well, we are living through an era in which our police have been subject to unfair defamation and vilification, and even, really, I mean, you see what's going on. You see what's going on. Even worse, hostility and violence. More officers were slain last year in ambushes than in any year in more than 2 decades, including, and that's so incredible to even have to be speaking about this, the beloved officers killed in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in yet another murderous attack of law enforcement. And we have some of those incredible families and survivors with us. Thank you. The attacks on our police are a stain on the very fabric of our society, and you are entitled to leadership at the highest level that will draw a bright line in the sand, not a red line in the sand that isn't gone over, but a bright line in the sand, and we will protect you, that I can tell you, and we will say enough is enough. The attacks on our police must end, and they must end right now. And just to show you, by the way, how much I love our police, I said, oh, I'm going to need a hat because it's so windy today. I said, when I get out here, there's no way I'm going to put on this hat. So we'll leave off the hat. And this is for you, Micah. That's for our beautiful Micah down there. We must also end the reckless words of incitement that give rise to danger and give rise to violence. It is time to work with our cops, not against them, but to support them in making our streets safe, not to obstruct them, which we're doing. We obstruct them. It is time for all Americans from all parties and beliefs to join together in a simple goal: to ensure that every child in America has the right to grow up in safety, security, and peace. True social justice means a future where every child in every neighborhood can play outside without fear, can walk home safely from school, and can live out the beautiful dreams that fill their heart. Like you, Micah. Freedom includes the right to be free, and I mean totally free from crime and from violence. MS-13 is going to be gone from our streets very soon, believe me. These two guys. When policing is reduced, it's often the poorest and most vulnerable Americans who are the first to suffer. We have all seen the tragic rise in violence and crimes in many of our disadvantaged communities. We've seen the unbearable horror of the shortcomings in Baltimore and Chicago that have cut short so many lives and so many beautiful, beautiful dreams. We cannot stand for such violence. We cannot tolerate such pain. We cannot, under any circumstances, any longer turn a blind eye to the suffering that's going on any longer, and we won't. It's time for a grateful nation to join hands with our police and with our sheriffs to build the bridges of cooperation and trust and to make our streets safer for every man, woman, and child in America. And someday, many of the young children you are protecting will decide that they too want to be police officers, that they too want to be sheriffs. They want to be cops. They want to be cops. They want to protect people because they love people. And that's what they're going to do, and they're going to do it well. They're going to be great at it. As we seek this better and brighter future, We do so in the memory of these brave but gentle souls who were stolen from this world when they had so much left to share and to give, not only to us, but to their incredible families. Among them were Patrolman Justin Martin and Sergeant Tony Berminio, who were murdered last November. Patrolman Martin was on the beat for less than a year and leaves a beautiful, loving mom and dad, Randy and Jane. And thank you, Randy and Jane. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sergeant Berminio was a veteran of 11 years and leaves behind his wife, Zoe, and his wonderful children, Cameron, Haley, and Maddox. Ashley Gwindon of the Prince William County Police fell in the line of duty on her very first day on the beat. She swore the oath to protect and serve only a day prior to her death. One day. Officer Gwindon was dedicated to serving our nation. She also served in the Marines, and today our thoughts are with her and her incredible mother, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. I also had the privilege to meet at the White House just a little while ago with representatives from the Phoenix Police Department, New Jersey State Troopers, and the Ulster County Sheriff's Department, who are mourning the deaths of State Trooper Frankie Williams and Sergeant Curry Winters. I had the chance to spend time with Officer Lasser's beautiful family, his wife, Kristen, and his 6-year-old son, Micah, who has my hat, and he's now with us. Micah, stand up. Kristen, please stand up. Great people. Kristen and Mike, I know your beloved husband and father is looking down on you right now from heaven, and he is so proud of you both, and thank you very much. Thank you. We also remember those incredible heroes who were so cruelly targeted for execution in Dallas, Texas, rushing into a hail of gunfire, never to return. Dallas Police Sergeant Michael Smith was a 27-year veteran of the Dallas Police. He was decorated a law enforcement officer at the highest level and even paid his own way to attend advanced training sessions. He leaves behind his cherished wife, Heidi, and his loving daughters, Victoria and Carolyn. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Last Friday in Kirkersville, Ohio, a gunman shot and killed Stephen Eric Desario. He was the chief of the Kirkersville Police Department. He died responding to a hostage situation at a local nursing home. Chief Desario leaves behind 6 children and his wife, who is expecting another child. Our hearts break for the chief's family. We love you all. We love you all. Thank you. To every child in America who has lost a mom or a dad in the line of duty, I want you to know your parents are American heroes. American heroes. They died keeping us safe. They are the pride of our nation, and we will hold them in our hearts always and forever. Their sacrifice will never, ever be forgotten. To everyone in the audience here today, I want you to know that my administration is determined, totally determined, to restore law and order and justice for all Americans, and we're going to do it quickly. And that is why I'm so proud to be here today with Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Homeland Security Director John Kelly, two men who are deeply committed to the rule of law, to the rank and file officers who enforce it, and to bringing the violent criminals, drug dealers, and gang members to justice, and I mean bring them to justice quickly. Thank you very much for being here. All of you at this ceremony, the men and women who police the streets or who send our loved ones to work with a really very, very sometimes worried or heavy heart. Every single day you do that. You've seen and you've heard things that no one else should ever have to see or hear. You bear this burden on our behalf. You have witnessed the evil of those who derive pleasure from inflicting pain on the innocent. You've seen a lot of that, more recently than maybe ever before. It's going to stop. And you've watched great, great people suffer unthinkable harm and unthinkable death. America as a nation must always have the clarity to know the difference between good and evil, between right and wrong, and between those who uphold our laws and those who so easily break them. We owe it to the fallen to act according to our best and highest ideals. We owe it to their memory to put truth before politics, justice before agendas, and to put the safety and security of the American people above everything else. And we owe it to them to build a better future for all of America's wonderful children. May today be the beginning of a new era of respect and appreciation for law enforcement. May this ceremony bring new hope to those in search of healing, harmony, and peace. May Americans learn from the example of the heroes we have lost and always remember to trust each other, work with each other, and love each other. And finally, and so importantly, may God bless you, may God bless our police, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you for joining us here on our Fox 5 Live coverage in our digital newsroom here of this 36th Annual Peace Officers Memorial Ceremony. This is all taking place, you can see there in your left-hand corner of your screen, on the west lawn, the west side of the Capitol building. And this is apparently a couple-hour ceremony. We heard from some public officials, law enforcement as well, and the president himself and the vice president also mentioning his respect and honor for law enforcement, for treating them well, for what they do for the community. He even threw a mention in about MS-13, the gang violence that we've seen in the news quite often recently. And following the ceremony, there will be a wreath-laying ceremony as well. This is all part of National Police Week, which starts today, Monday, May 15th, and goes throughout the week with various ceremonies and candle lightings of that sort. So once again, you're watching Fox 5 Live. Thanks for joining us here on our YouTube stream. Feel free to chat along with us on our chat that you see on the right-hand corner of your screen. And if you like what you see, our live coverage of different events happening across the country and the world today, click subscribe on our YouTube channel. You can see whenever we pop up live with that breaking coverage for you. We're going to keep you on this footage for now as we see the president exit the ceremony and then bring you more breaking news. All right, guys, back with me in the newsroom. My name is Molly. You're watching Fox 5 Live. We are the digital newsroom based in Washington, D.C., bringing you all the breaking news and live coverage during your lunch break or lunch hour. So thanks for checking in with us. We're going to change gears a little bit and bring you a story that happened over the weekend. And our reporter here at Fox 5, Lindsay Watts, as well as our photojournalist, Van Applegate, brought us this awesome package on love and unity and kindness that came out of a hate crime in a local town in Virginia, in Crofton, Maryland. Now, a Maryland middle school, what happened was police in Anne Arundel County, that's where Crofton, Maryland is, arrested two 19-year-olds for hanging nooses at Crofton Middle School in Maryland. Just another hate crime. We've seen this throughout the past weeks. We saw this at American University in the past couple weeks as well. But in response to this, the community came together and actually formed a bond and brought together a group of kindness to sort of work against this hate crime. Check out this little package that Van and Lindsay put together over the weekend.
And inviting and positive community. The fact that all of you came out today to spread spread that message and to make it loud and clear that hate will not be tolerated and that kindness always wins. It's so appreciated.
A sea of people at Crofton Middle School, chalk in hand. The goal was to bring some beauty here. EQU. After the ugly act earlier this week.
And I saw it when I was walking to the bathroom.
Alana Witter is in 6th grade.
At first, I thought it was just a rope hanging from just a light for some reason, but then I looked closely and I saw what it actually was, and I was shocked.
Yeah, she called me twice actually. She wanted to be picked up from school.
I was actually really sad. I felt like I wanted to go home, but I didn't go home because I didn't want them to be happy that we were reacting to it.
She got bigger pieces of chalk. This is the reaction she and her family wanted to be part of.
The fact that my community rejected it the way that they did and all showed up on Mother's Day of all days really makes a difference to me.
With so much help, the pavement was covered with positive messages and images in less than an hour. Down the front of the building, stretching around to the back. Students will have a lot to look at as they come into school, and hopefully this will serve as a reminder.
A whole school with 1,000 people is so much bigger than 2 people hanging up a noose, and that they'll have some light into their day.
I just hope that every student that walks through that doorway tomorrow knows that they are loved and they are special, and that kindness will always beat hate.
So just a cool story coming out of something that was full of hate over this weekend. They left those messages in chalk so that students could come back to those kind messages on Monday. And also just to note, the 2 suspects in that hate crime case were apprehended on Friday. We're going to bring you over now to another live event that's happening now. Lawyers are presenting arguments to the U.S. 9th Circuit Court of Appeals in Seattle. This is all to do with President Trump's travel ban on 6 majority Muslim countries to get that reinstated or not. That's all happening now. They were slated to bring this up in Seattle today, and looks like we have live coverage of that. So let's jump over to that courtroom, see what it looks like inside.
Den requires at least some affirmative showing of bad faith. I think here in this context, it ought to be a really high one, so it isn't just a sort of wide-ranging de novo inquiry into subjective motivation.
If we conclude that the district court applied the wrong standard, the government's position is it should be Mandel, correct?
That's right.
Shouldn't we send it back to the district court to apply Mandel and to see if plaintiffs can make out an affirmative case of bad faith?
I mean, you could send it back, Judge Hawkins, but I have to say that I think plaintiffs haven't sought any additional discovery here. I mean, we have a record. We know what the statements were as a matter of fact, and I think this court is as well placed as the district court to look at those statements and to determine, in the absence of testimony or credibility determinations or any of that, none of which went on below, are those enough to get us bad faith under Den? I think it would be the same inquiry in the district court as in this court.
Is there any case? There is no case like this, is there?
Well, no, Judge Pius. I think in part because no one has ever attempted to set aside a law that is neutral on its face and neutral in operation on the basis of largely campaign trail comments made by a private citizen running for office.
When I read Mandel, it's clearly dealing with a specific application of standards to a specific visa denial. And that's not what we have here at all.
No, but of course, Judge Pius, the Supreme Court in Fialo applied it equally to a statute.
That's correct.
Courts of appeals like the Second Circuit have applied it to broad policy determinations by the executive. I don't think the Supreme Court or really any of the courts of appeals has ever tried to limit the Mandel test to just a discretionary denial of a visa by a consular officer. And I think for the reasons some members of this court gave at the rehearing stage in the Washington case, it really wouldn't make much sense to say that a single consular officer overseas and denying a visa gets more deference than the President of the United States in making a formal national security determination in an executive order.
In the context of this case,
We're over in Seattle for a live video right now where judges are hearing the appeal of Hawaii's challenge to President Trump's travel ban that targeted 6 predominantly Muslim countries. So you are in the courtroom right now. This is a live picture over in Seattle. I'm going to get some more information for you and bring that to you shortly.
Broad policy. I mean, Congress and the previous executive designated these countries as those that sponsor shelter terrorism. They took individuals.
And how many nationals does it apply to out of those countries? A large number.
Well, I mean, whatever the number of nationals who try to travel to the country and can't otherwise obtain waivers, we don't know yet, obviously, because we haven't been able to implement the order. But my point is just the distinctions were made by Congress and the previous administration, who took individuals with connections to these countries out of the visa waiver program. This administration, to be sure, said, as a matter of policy, I'm not sure that's enough. I don't know if I'm getting reliable information from the governments of these 6 countries. So I'm going to put a brief pause on entry while I look at the vetting procedures for those nations, subject to a pretty robust individualized waiver process. That's a policy judgment, to be sure, and it's a difference in degree, but I don't think it's a difference in kind from what the previous administration did.
Can we go step back just a little bit? At your brief, you start off by challenging the standing. Dr. El-Sheikh in Hawaii.
Right.
What is that? Is that still core? Is that a still core argument for you in this case?
Yes. I mean, we've made the arguments in our briefs, but I think the easiest way to think about it, if I were going to boil it down, Judge Paez, is
you didn't raise standing at the district court level, correct?
No, we did. We argued both in the district. We argued extensively in the district court about whether they had both Article III injury and prudential standing, Judge Hawkins. But if you look at the Cardenas case, Judge Paez, I really think that's the roadmap. This court said correctly, look, the denial of entry to aliens abroad is generally not reviewable because those aliens don't have any constitutional rights. U.S. citizens can attempt to argue that their own constitutional rights have been infringed by the denial of entry. The problem here is Hawaii doesn't have any rights to claim under the Establishment Clause of the Due Process Clause. So really down to Dr. El-Sheikh, he's not raising his own Establishment Clause right. He is raising his own Due Process Clause right. So if you think he's got Article III injury, he can at least raise his due process claim. But the problem with that claim is it fails on the merits because he doesn't have a protected liberty interest with respect to his mother-in-law.
How do we evaluate his claim in light of our holding in Catholic League?
I don't think Catholic League doesn't suggest that it doesn't take any issue with the general rule that where you're claiming alleged discrimination on some basis like religion, only the victims or putative targets of that discrimination have standing to challenge it. Here, this order is aimed at aliens abroad who themselves have no constitutional rights. Dr. El-Sheikh doesn't have an Establishment Clause right to raise, and I don't think the Catholic League case indicates any differently.
His argument is that, go ahead. His argument is that in reality, this is a ban against members of adherents of the Islamic faith, correct? That's his argument.
No, that's right.
And that this broad policy disparages adherents to that faith in the same way that the individual residents of San Francisco County felt disparaged when the Board of Supervisors adopted this resolution saying that the cardinal of that diocese was acting in a terrible and un-American way by refusing to refer adoptees to same-sex couples. So what's the difference?
So I think you had 2 key differences.
An interesting little fact here, Judge Hawkins is who you're watching right now at the judge stand there with a microphone. He is a judge that joined Judge Reinhart in California to strike down California's gay marriage ban in 2012. So you heard him just now reference that ban, and now they're talking about reinstating this travel ban on 6 majority Muslim countries, and you're hearing lawyers appeal to this judge. This is live in Seattle right now. I'm going to bring you a 2-shot now, just so you can see. I mean, they are talking about President Trump, and he's right there in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, still rolling out of the ceremony today at the Capitol for the Peace Officers Memorial. That is all part of National Police Week. You can see him there still with his public officials and other law enforcement.
Yes.
There is going to be a laying of the wreath ceremony after that ceremony rounds out. And once again, we'll keep this 2-shot up so you can see inside the courtroom in Seattle.
His mother-in-law is a national of one of the listed countries. She can apply for a waiver. I think based on what they've alleged, it's exceedingly likely she'd get one, which I think goes to show
And how does that affect his injury or harm?
I think it shows that his harm is speculative and his claims are unripe. But if you disagreed with us on that and you found that he had standing, then I think you'd turn to the merits, and what you'd say is he's attempting to raise an Establishment Clause claim on behalf of somebody else. That's not properly before the court. He is raising his own due process claim, but it fails on the merits because no court has extended the due process right to in-laws, and whatever process he wants, this order more than gives it to him and his mother-in-law, because there's no doubt about why, if she doesn't receive a waiver, which we think she's likely to, what the reason for that would be. It's on the face of the order itself. There's nothing more that we could tell you, and that's why below they disavowed any desire for individualized hearings or the like, because this is a categorical policy. There's no more process we could give them, and they've never said what it would look like that would do anything more to inform them about what the reason for the EO is. I think what they're really raising is a substantive challenge, but again, they have two problems. One, they can't make out that case on the Establishment Clause side, and two, they never pleaded a substantive due process claim below. They phrased it only in procedural due process terms.
She's not seeking an immigrant visa, correct?
I believe she is seeking no, I guess it's a non-immigrant visa to visit. I think you're right, Judge Hawkins.
It wouldn't fall within 1152, however that relates to 1183 or whatever.
That's right. I mean, and I think our position...
The doctor is not the sponsor, correct?
I believe it's his wife that is the sponsor, but I'll leave...
And is she the plaintiff?
No, she is not a plaintiff.
Okay.
I take your point, Judge Hawkins, and just to say a word about the statutes to make clear how we think they operate. 1182 applies to entry by its terms. Nothing in 1152, which deals with the issuance of immigrant visas, limits in any way 1182, nor could it. It would raise serious constitutional problems if, for instance, it were to disable the president from suspending nationals from a particular country if, say, he got actionable intelligence that someone was attempting to bring let's say, a dirty bomb into the country. So really what we're just down to is the question, are we required to issue immigrant visas to the 30% of people affected by this order who want immigrant visas, even though once they arrive at the borders, we can keep them from entering under 1182F?
Didn't you concede before the Fourth Circuit that as a practical effect, implementation of the pause or ban, however you want to phrase it, sort of precludes relief under 1152?
Yes, what we told the Fourth Circuit was the State Department has always implemented suspensions under 1182F by denying visas, because otherwise you'd be letting people come to the country. A visa is a travel document, and then once they got here at the borders, you'd be turning them away. And the State Department has never read 1182 or 1152 to require that kind of fruitless and harsh exercise. We also told the Fourth Circuit the same thing I'll say to you. If you agree with them on their reading of 1152, it can't ground the current injunction. At most, it would be an injunction against the government that would require us to issue immigrant visas to people who wanted to come here, even though once they arrived, we could keep them from entering under 1182F. We don't think that system would make a lot of sense.
Like Tom Hanks at the airport, right?
I think that's right. I mean, and that's why the State Department has always said, when you are denied a visa under 1152, it's only because you are validly suspended under 1182F. That's the reason. It's not, in effect, a nationality-based distinction. But again, if you disagreed with us on that, it would be the basis for a different injunction, one that I think would be practically pretty fruitless and harsh, but that would be the result. I don't think there's any way that you can read 1152 to limit the president's suspension of entry power under 1182F. So once you make that move, then there's no basis for the injunction here.
Well, it seems like you have to read them together. That is, you're dealing with a process. Isn't that right?
I think that's right, but the way to reconcile them, I think, Judge Paez, is the way that the State Department has, which is to say, look, 1152 governs the issuance of immigrant visas all the time in lots of other contexts. Where you have 1182 suspension, we're not denying you on the basis of your nationality. We're just denying you because you've been validly suspended. But if you thought they conflicted, I'd still say 1182F as the more specific would trump. Because what you're talking about is the president making a specific finding with respect to these categories of aliens and then suspending their entry. But again, I don't think
1152 was more recent. Congress passed that one in 65?
That's right, but then you'd have to get past the presumption against implied repeals. You'd have to say that Congress, when Congress passed that.
Why is that an implied repeal? And it's just, you read them together.
Well, because
once again, guys, you are watching live inside a courtroom in Seattle. 3 judges who are appointed by Bill Clinton are hearing the appeal to Hawaii's challenge to President Trump's travel ban on 6 Muslim majority countries. And you're hearing this talk here from these lawyers inside this courtroom. And concurrently, I have going on the ceremony on Capitol Hill, right outside the Capitol building there on the west side. The ceremony is still going on. We saw the president speak himself, as well as Vice President Pence and some other officials. The ceremony, I think, continues for a little longer here, and it will wind down and end with a wreath-laying ceremony for law enforcement officers who have fallen on the job or who have dedicated their lives to the job. We'll also be bringing you the White House press briefing coming up in a little bit. If you caught SNL this weekend on Saturday, there was definitely a little piece of that that dealt with Sean Spicer and Sarah Huckabee Sanders as well. We'll see Sean Spicer at the podium today around 1:30 is what we're expecting. So we're going to keep this 2-shot up for now. And you are watching Fox 5 Live here in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching, guys.
National security justification.
Judge Gould, I think that's the nub of the case, and that's Mandel, right? In Mandel, Justice Marshall in dissent said, look, if you'll take even the briefest peek behind the reason that the Attorney General has given, you'll see that it's not really why they denied him. They really denied him because he was a communist, and he wanted to come in and give lectures on communism. And the court said, we're not going to look behind. We're not going to take a look at any of that evidence that's in Justice Marshall's dissent. This is rational basis review. Is it a legitimate purpose on its face? And is it bona fide? Does it bear a rational relationship to what the government's done? And this court in a number of cases has said Mandel's rational basis review. And I think the benefit of that standard, as the court recognized in Mandel, Judge Gould, is it doesn't call on courts to make these sorts of determinations, the second guessing of national security determinations that they're sort of ill-equipped to do. And the flip side, of course, is what the plaintiffs won in the Washington case, right? They've asked for up to a year of discovery and up to 30 depositions of White House officials to find out exactly what was in the heads and what were the motives of the people framing this EO. And that's the road that in Mandel, the Supreme Court clearly said it was not going to go down, subject, as Judge Pius said, to the narrow bad faith exception in Dinh, where you've got an affirmative showing of bad faith. And here you would need official capacity statements that were unequivocal, right, post-inauguration to show that the president and members of his cabinet were acting in bad faith. And I just don't think they can make that kind of a remarkable showing here.
Let me ask the same question that my friend Robert King asked you a week ago. Has the president ever disavowed his campaign statements? Has he ever stood up and said, I said before I wanted to ban all members of the Islamic faith from entering the United States of America. I was wrong. I've consulted with lawyers. I'm now addressing it simply to security needs. Has he ever said anything approaching that?
Yes, Judge Hawkins, he has said several things approaching that, and I think it's detailed in various amicus briefs. The best one is probably the Southeastern Legal Foundation brief, and Part 3 walks through the comments and shows that over time the president clarified that what he was talking about were Islamic terrorist groups and the countries that shelter or sponsor them. And over time, he and his advisors clarified that what he was focused on were groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And really the one post-inauguration statement they've got, the we all know what that means, I'd encourage the court to go back and look at the ceremony in which the president signed that executive order.
The second one.
Well, that's the first one, right? They don't have anything on the second order. But even if you said, okay, that's the first one and we'll carry that through, which for various reasons we've said you shouldn't.
What about the statements where his surrogates have said the president is simply carrying out his campaign promises on this issue?
But that's true, Judge Hawkins, because during the campaign, he clarified that what he was talking about were territories and countries that Congress and the previous administration had determined were dangerous. And what he wanted to do was, he said, increase the vetting procedures. And that's what he said 3 minutes before he signed the first order, standing there next to the newly sworn-in Secretary Mattis.
Sounds like you argue that our approach to these statements should be sort of an abuse of discretion review. If you could read the statements, good or bad, we should defer to the good.
I think the value of the Mandel standard is that
you don't look.
Is that courts don't start engaging in this, but if you do, and for the reasons we've said in our briefs, we think as a matter of law you shouldn't. But if the court were taking them all into account, and here I mean not just the post-inauguration official capacity statements, but the campaign trail stuff, we would still say, look, the president clarified over time, and in the face of ambiguity about that, both respect for a coordinate branch and the presumption of regularity would require not reading them, I think as the district court did here, in the light most hostile and least favorable to the president.
We did, you're right. We did receive a number of briefs in this case, a number of amicus briefs. And Judge Hawkins' question reminded me of something that caught my eye in one of the briefs, which is the Korematsu, from the brief from the Korematsu Center. Would the Korematsu executive order pass muster under your test today?
No, Judge Baez.
Why not?
I want to be very...
Facially legitimate. That's all you say. You emphasize facially legitimate.
I want to be very clear about this. This case is not Korematsu, and if it were, I wouldn't be standing here, and the United States would not be defending it.
All right, guys, we're going to take you back into the digital newsroom here. I'm Molly Nevola. Thanks for joining us on Fox 5 Live. We'll change gears for just a second. Maybe you caught this last night, but Miss USA competition was held last night on Fox, and we had the chance to meet some of the women that were in the show, in the contest, earlier a few weeks ago on our morning show. We had Miss Virginia USA, Miss Maryland, and Miss DC USA, who was the ultimate woman who was queened Miss USA last night, Kyra McCullough. It was so great to meet her. I remember personally meeting her and talking to her upstairs about her background in science and STEM and engineering and everything she wants to do to encourage women. Now, she won the competition last night, so I'm going to bring you back to a little recap of that so you can see what happened. And first, check out this video. This is a little Snapchat video that I took of her when she was here visiting our show, and she was just doing a little promo to come on the morning show along with the other girls. And this is what she looked like just a few weeks ago in our studio.
Hey there, it's Kyra McCullough, Miss DC USA, and I'm here at Good ABC. We're going to talk about the Miss USA competition on May 14th, as well as women, richmond, and children.
All right. And this is what happened last night. Take a listen here.
Our new Miss USA 2017 has been crowned in Las Vegas. She's 25-year-old Kyra McCullough, a scientist who works for the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Her big moment coming after 51 women squared off for the title live on Fox.
So this was a mixture of video and sound on the competition last night. And you hear a little bit about Kyra's background.
This year's competition included 5 women who immigrated to the U.S. Hosts Julianne Hough and Terrence J. say beyond outward appearance, the year's pageant focused on celebrating women, their confidence, what they're doing in their communities, and their voices. The pageant did feature the traditional swimsuit competition, as well as musical acts by Pitbull, Cirque du Soleil, and country star Brett Eldridge.
So that was just a little video on the competition from last night, and our very own DC, Kyra McCullough, did win the competition. It was really cool to have her in studio a couple weeks ago, and she's focusing on showing women that they can learn science and engineering, and that is a career path for women. Now, she got the final question was about healthcare, and that has sparked a little bit of controversy. She was asked whether it was a right or a privilege, and she said it is a privilege, and she cited her government employment as part of how she knows that or realizes that. So let us know what you think in the comments in the chat box on our YouTube stream, guys. We're going to head back into live in Seattle. This is the San Francisco-based 9th U.S. Circuit of Appeals, hearing arguments on Hawaii's challenge to President Trump's travel ban on 6 Muslim-majority countries. This is happening live. We'll bring you over there and then take you back somewhere else in just a brief moment.
And the Fourth Circuit had a number of questions about this too. The president in sections 1D and E and F of the order makes clear that what he's concerned about, he's really two things. One, the ties between terrorist groups and these 6 countries that were listed by Congress in the previous administration, and the concern that the governments of those countries and the deteriorating conditions in places like Iran and Syria may mean we're not getting reliable information. And so what the president found was he said, look, I find that it would be detrimental to nationals for a brief period of 90 days while I ascertain whether the vetting procedures that we have in place for these countries are actually adequate. So he wasn't saying, I find that it would be detrimental because they're all dangerous or they all are potential terrorists or anything like that. He was saying in the face of uncertainty about whether we're getting good information from their governments so that we can screen them out in the visa process, I'm going to put a temporary hold subject to the visa waiver. And I think under a Mandel rational basis review, but frankly under any legal standard, I think the president's detrimentality determination there would easily survive. The second half of your question gets back a little bit to what Judge Hawkins and I were talking about. 1182 is entry. 1152A is issuance of immigrant visas. The State Department has always reconciled those by saying that when the president suspends a group, even if in part on the basis of nationality, that the reason for the denial under 1152 is not the nationality, it's that you're subject to a valid suspension. So the State Department has in practice always reconciled them so that we're not giving travel documents to people who would arrive and then we would keep them from entering. But again, if the court disagrees with us on that, I think at most it would be the basis for an injunction that said for the 30% of aliens or so subject to this order who want immigrant visas, we'd be required to give them the visas, even though when they arrived, we wouldn't have to allow them to enter the country because of the 1182F suspension. I think as the district judge in the Maryland case recognized that wouldn't be a sensible result. I think the State Department's reading of these statutes is the far more sensible one, but no matter what reading you take, unless you say that the president is disabled, every president, permanently, from making any nationality-based distinctions under 1182F, Reagan with the Cubans or Carter with the Iranians, unless you take that road, I don't think there's any way to read the statutes that could provide the basis for the injunction we have here. And if I could just reserve the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us here on Fox 5 Live. We're going to switch gears a little bit.
Taking us to Laverne, California, where a bear was hit by a car on the freeway.
Totally going to switch gears and bring you over to California to a bear that was hit by a vehicle. Check out these aerials just coming into us.
Color. That is a black bear. The brown bear, the grizzly bear, which is our state's bear, is actually extinct. And these bears can be quite large, anywhere from 200 plus pounds for females, 350 plus pounds for males. And it's believed that 30,000 black bears reside in our Golden State. And this one injured, it was struck by a car, and now it's been tranquilized, we believe, and will hopefully be heading to get some help shortly. As of right now, not impacting the 210 freeway. We'll widen out one more time. This is the 210 Foothill Freeway through Laverne. East and westbound lanes are open, but the on-ramp to the 210 westbound from Fruit Street is closed. We'll keep an eye on this from up here in Skyfox. For now, I'm Rick Dickert reporting back to you in the studio.
So just a little report from our sister station out there in Los Angeles. We're getting these aerials from them. Apparently a brown bear has been hit by a vehicle. You saw him sort of hiding away there in the trees in the woods. Interesting kind of case that we just get these live feeds in, and we want to bring you those sources when we have them so you can see just what's going on your break. Thanks for joining us, by the way. I'm Molly Nevola at Fox 5 Live in D.C., Washington, D.C., here in our newsroom. There you see the bear up a little closer. Apparently, they say, you heard the reporter say he may be tranquilized at this point. That is what we got going on there. But let's switch gears a little bit, too, and go over this weekend. I want to tell you quickly, the Baywatch movie premiere happened this weekend. The movie comes out on May 25th, but our entertainment movie reporter, Kevin McCarthy, was down there. It looked like he had an awesome time, and he got to interview The Rock, The Rock, about the movie, and also got to ask him a little question that everyone's been wondering about The Rock for president. So check out this interview here.
Now, wait, I'm in D.C. If you run for president, we could be neighbors. Can you talk about, are you being serious? Like, I would love that. I would vote for you, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I was asked, thank you. It means a lot. And, it's been very flattering that there's been this surge, and a lot of people have come out and expressed their support of that. And I was asked by the GQ writer, would I consider it? And I said yes. And then it blew up, and here we are. So I also think, though, Kevin, that it's the surge of people and Americans who are saying, yes, I want DJ to run, you should run for president. I think it's reflective of a need of leadership right now, right, that they are unhappy with. So I also want to, that's the perspective we got to keep in mind. But thank you, dude,
it was really good to see you, man. You're so
Appreciate
awesome.
the vote.
Hey, good to see you. I've already voted. This is Andrew, man.
Hey.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
How's it going?
How you doing?
Use the word taint in it.
Like, great. I can get Zach to say it.
Now, wait, I'm in D.C.
So not a super, super straight answer from The Rock, but Kevin got to ask him that question, which was super cool. And Kevin, obviously being based here, was able to link that with, I'm here. What would that be like if you ran for president? So that was neat that he got that in. Let's flash you back quickly to this bear in California. Checking it out here. No new live updates from our reporter there, but it looks like this bear has been hit by a car and is hiding away in the bushes and possibly tranquilized, is what we were hearing. We're going to bring back the courtroom in Seattle. And just remember, coming up at 1:30, the White House press briefing with Sean Spicer will be happening. We have a reporter there, Ronica Cleary, covering that. We'll see what he has to say about Trump's events today. Of course, President Trump, we had it earlier, speaking at the annual Peace Officers Memorial on Capitol Hill for fallen law enforcement. And so we'll hear more there, and whatever else is relevant in President Trump's world today. Let's go back to Seattle, to the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Here we go, jumping in the courtroom.
Statements, by the way, just one last point, do continue. Even last month, the Doe brief, which was filed before you, says even last month, the president said it's a lot easier for Muslims to immigrate than Christian refugees from the Middle East. And, quote, he's going to be helping the Christians big league. So this is a repeated pattern of the president. Indeed, 2 months ago, to this day, when the district court struck down the injunction in this case, this is at SER 84, the president said, quote, moments ago, I learned that a district judge in Hawaii, part of the much overturned Ninth Circuit, just blocked our executive order. This is a watered down version of the first one. And let me tell you something. I think we ought to go back to the first one and go all the way, which is what I wanted to do.
Does that mean that all those statements, post-election statements, even the one you just read, does that mean that the president is forever barred from issuing an executive order along these lines? And what does he have to do to issue an executive order that, in your view, might pass constitutional muster?
Not at all. So I think there's two paths that the president could take in order to pass constitutional muster. One is the way that our founders thought, Article 1, Section 8, which is Congress, which is in the driver's seat with respect to immigration, passes a statute. And as Justice Alito said, when Congress passes a statute, it's much less likely to discriminate. It's 535 people versus one, which is why his Mandel point is so problematic. That's number one. Second thing they could do is the president could do all the kinds of things thing, or some of the kinds of things, remove the things that the district court found led an objective observer to say that this discriminates. So one example would be what Judge Hawkins said about disavowing formally, all of the stuff before. But that's not it. I mean, he could do a lot of things. He could do, for example, and I'm just going to throw out some examples. I'm not trying to micromanage the president, but he could say, like President Bush did right after September 11th, quote, "The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is about. Islam is peace." Instead, we get, quote, "Islam hates us. I think Islam hates us." I think he could point to changed circumstances from December 2015 when Congress debated the exact same evidence that the president relies on in his executive order and say, we actually need more than just denying people entry without a visa, which is what Congress required. You need to do more than that. It could eliminate the text, which refers to honor killings. There's a bunch of different things that could be done. And our fundamental point to you is that presidents, presidents don't run into Establishment Clause problems, and the reason for that is that this is a very limited, in a really unusual case in which you have these public statements by the president. Indeed, if you affirm the district court, there's not a thing that any president has done in our lifetime that would be unconstitutional.
Before the Fourth Circuit, one of the judges asked, well, suppose it had been another individual who had issued the same executive order and hadn't said all these things, would it pass constitutional muster?
Oh, so I think the most important point is if you don't say all these things, you never wind up with an executive order like this, which is why no president has done that. But I take the hypothetical, and if that hypothetical arose, I think it would be different. That is, context matters. The Supreme Court in McCreary, for example, says, look, governments can close shops on Sundays, and if they do it because of labor, they want to give workers a rest, that's fine. But if they do it and at the same time announce the reason why I'm doing it is to help churches, that's obviously an Establishment Clause problem. And so that's why context matters. It always has in the context of the Establishment Clause. And here, the history is overwhelming. And that's why this is so unique. This is not, something that is going to hamstring any president from anything that's happened in our lifetimes. This is a very unusual circumstance in which you have all of these different statements.
You've, in your briefs and before the district court, you argued the statutory grounds quite extensively. Could you respond to the government's argument?
Absolutely. We
do
think
that the two statutes need to be read separately?
Yeah, I think, Judge Paez, you had it exactly right. So, our basic statutory argument, I'll respond to the government, but let me set out exactly what the argument is, which is that the president is claiming a sweeping power, essentially to set aside the INA. In fact, the president refers to, quote, an absolute right to ban any group or anybody. That's in our brief at page 3. And if you read it that way, if you listen to what Mr. Wall said, you were giving the president the ability to take a magic eraser to the entire United States Code with respect to immigration and nullify anything because of this 1182 provision. And that can't possibly be what the statute is about. That is, there are 4 problems with the with their statutory argument. One is what you were just referring to, Judge Paez, about 1152, that this is nationality-based discrimination. But there's also 3 other things. It also flouts Congress's finely reticulated scheme, the terrorism bar. It's a 10-part test for determining whether someone could be excluded on an individual basis on grounds of terrorism.
1182A.
It's 1182A, and it's also some other provisions, but so that's there. In addition, you have Congress's specific judgment on the very evidence that is in the executive order from December 2015, and what Congress said is, we don't need to have group dragnet-based exclusions. We just need to insist on visas when people come in with respect to these very countries. And then the last, and I think maybe the most important thing, and it sets up your question about Korematsu, is, the government has not engaged in mass dragnet exclusions, in the past, 50 years. This is something new and unusual in which you're saying this whole class of people, some of which are dangerous, we can bar them all. Our brief at pages 37 to 42 explains this in detail. The government has not a single answer in their brief to this. And so I think those are the statutory violations. Now you said, well, can't you read them together? And we think that's, absolutely the way to view this. This is not an implied repeal. Section 1182F gives the president broad powers. We don't disagree with that. But the one thing it can't do is do what is to violate a statute and supplant a law of Congress. To do so is to basically transform the statutes into mere suggestions and nothing more than that. And so, when the Congress says in clear and unmistakable language, that no person shall receive any preference or priority or be discriminated against in the issuance of an immigrant visa because of the person's nationality, that's pretty clear. Now, my friend on the other side says, well, if you read it that way, then there'll be a Libyan who's going to come into the country and so on. But I think Judge Santel in the D.C. Circuit answered that very clearly by saying, no, there's obviously an emergency exception if Congress can't meet or something like that. The statute isn't going to reach such a thing. But here, there's no emergency precluding Congress from acting in this way.
If there is a statutory violation here, what's the relief as to correct the statutory violation, putting aside the Establishment Clause for a moment?
So we think because there's different statutory violations, the Section 2 does fall. That is, as a whole. That is, they're supplanting Congress's fine-grained terrorism scheme with a dragnet ban, and so the whole thing falls. I think you might be asking just about 1152 and the immigrant visas provision. If we find that, our point to you in our brief says this, and it starts with Judge Friendly's opinion in 1966, the year after this landmark statute was enacted. Congress didn't just say something about immigrant visas. And by the way, Judge Hawkins, the mother-in-law is seeking an immigrant visa, a green card for Dr. El-Sheikh. Congress said more than that.
I think that's what your opponent said.
Okay, so I just want to make sure. So Congress said in 1965, we are changing fundamentally what our immigration system is about, and we are not going to engage in nationality-based discrimination anymore. And that extends even to non-immigrant visas. The American Bar Association brief goes through this in painstaking detail, as well as 165 members of Congress that have come before you and have explained exactly why that's so. Indeed, the government in the Olson case actually didn't even contest that. They said, yes, it applies to non-immigrant visas. So I think, it's a transformational statute, and indeed no president has done anything like this since that statute was enacted.
You think 1152 applies beyond immigrant visas?
I do. So I agree with you, the text doesn't, but as Judge Friendly found, and indeed as the government conceded in Olson, it does extend beyond that because of the way in which this statute took relevant factors and said, nationality is no longer a relevant factor for purposes of our immigration.
So you would have us look to what you argue is the purpose of the statute as opposed to its language.
Oh, no, I'm just, I wouldn't say necessarily the purpose. I think that the statute, immigration law has always, as the Supreme Court said in Judalong versus Holder, you always have to look to relevant factors and understand what does Congress deem relevant and what not. And I think that when you ask yourself that question, nationality is now no longer such a factor. That is, this was a transformational statute in 1965, passed contemporaneously with the Voting Rights Act. And so that's why. So again, that's on the 1152 argument, but I don't want the court to lose sight of the other bigger argument, which is that 1182, which sure looks like it's a broad statute, but it does ultimately supplant the more specific fine-grained 10-factor test that Congress laid down. And the government itself has said to the Supreme Court in the Marks case that when you have a more specific statute, that controls over a general grant of authority. And indeed, Supreme Court case after Supreme Court case, like Witchkovich or Zadvidas or so on, have said, look, this statute looks like an unbounded delegation of authority, but actually, we have to read it more narrowly.
Counsel, if I could interject a question on the statutory issues. If we were to conclude hypothetically that the Establishment Clause claim can't support the district court's injunction, could we still affirm the injunction on statutory ground?
Absolutely.
Either in whole or in part, and also related to that, could you touch on whether they're standing? The basis of your client's standing on the refugee provisions, and I think that would help me out.
Absolutely. So if you accepted our larger argument about the statute, Judge Gould, about 1182, then it would, I think, to affirm the district court's injunction as a whole. It's true that 1152, the nationality-based discrimination, the way to uphold the injunction as a whole would require reading the statute to encompass non-immigrant visas as well, as Judge Hawkins was illustrating. And so that is our reading. We think that's the way, since Judge Friendly's opinion, this has been read, but there's obviously going to be some, there can be a question about that. Now, with respect to the standing of refugees, both plaintiffs, we think, have standing. Hawaii has standing because in Washington versus Trump, the court actually found that the state of Washington had standing, indeed, even on the refugee claims, which were before the court. And here we have identified, indeed the government has pointed to 3 refugees that have come in this year in 2017. They said this, in the district court proceedings below. And so Hawaii has an interest in making sure that its refugee programs and the dollars it spent are actually being able to be used. And a flat ban on all refugees, which is what that executive order is, would basically force those dollars to be wasted. And with respect to Dr. El-Sheikh, he too has standing with respect to the refugees. His mosque actually has a refugee in it. I mean, he's the imam of the largest mosque in Hawaii. And so I do think for all of those reasons, there would be standing.
Does he have standing on 1152?
On 1152, he does, because...
I mean, if we assume that that only applies to immigrant visas, does he have standing?
He does, because she is seeking an immigrant visa, a green card, and the Lavas case, the D.C. Circuit case by Judge Sentel, allowed family members to bring a lawsuit and found it had standing, so it does.
Let me ask you a question. The government makes the argument that if you look at the statements surrounding, first of all, if you exclude, this is a hypothetical, if you exclude the campaign statements, if you look at the statements around the time of the issuance of the second executive order, including, you know what this means, language, that there's one way to read it, saying it's bad, there's one way to read it, saying it's good. Why shouldn't we be deferential to the office of President of the United States on such issues?
Yeah, so that's the million-dollar question, Judge Hawkins, and I don't think there's any precedent in this court or any other that says that when you're thinking about what a reasonable observer would view as an Establishment Clause problem, that you defer to a government official. Rather, the whole test is an objective observer, not what the president thinks. We're not impugning what's in his head. We're just saying objectively, this is how a reasonable viewer would see it. If you viewed it the other way and gave deference, then you'd really be giving the president the ability to bootstrap all sorts of things and say, well, enact all sorts of discriminatory policies, but then say, I defer, you have to defer to me. I don't think it's discriminatory, which, by the way, he hasn't even quite said. But you'd be in, I think, a really dangerous situation. And indeed, our founders were particularly concerned about the idea of immigration restrictions being used to establish a religion. That's actually what happened in colonial Virginia. And so I think the best way to think about it, and this is what the Supreme Court says, is think about what an objective observer would view this as. And the best evidence to say what an objective observer would view this as is, I think Judge Paez pointed to this, there are amicus brief after amicus brief. I'm not aware of any case like this in which so many different amicus briefs from across the country representing such a wide swath of life have said this is an Establishment Clause violation, that this enacts a disfavored religion, Islam. That includes 17 states, including states like Iowa and North Carolina, over 30 cities and counties, including Seattle, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco, South Bend, faith leaders and groups from across the spectrum, including the National Council of Churches representing 40 million Christians.
All right, you guys are watching lawyers appeal the challenge to President Trump's second travel ban on 6 majority Muslim countries. Now, also concurrently going on, we have this scene in Laverne, California. It's a little bit rainy, and this scene might be a little bit brutal, so we may not leave it on this video. You can see it's raining there in Laverne. You can barely make out a brown bear who was injured by a car. Apparently a vehicle has hit the bear, and now authorities are out to somehow capture, if not shoot the bear. We don't want to bring you that live on the digital stream. So I will probably jump out of that feed, but just so you know, that's going on. It looks real foggy now. It looks like we can't even see him, but authorities were surrounding this wooded area where the bear apparently escaped into and sort of retreated back to kind of hide away with his injuries. So no real new update on that. Looks like it's real rained out over there in California. We are still in this U.S. Ninth Circuit of Appeals. This is taking place in Seattle, Washington. And we're going to come back to D.C. very shortly, checking out the scene at the White House. That's what it looks like right now. We're going to go inside to the White House press briefing very shortly with Sean Spicer. That's coming up next. So stay with us here on Fox 5 Live, guys. Beautiful day here in D.C. Spring day. Wind is blowing. We're going to bring you inside in about 10 minutes or so. Back over to Seattle. We're going to check this out for a little bit longer, and then we'll bring you back over.
Its strength from the Abizak case. This is at the reply brief at page 21. When you go back and look at what that case is, because they try and pass this off as the majority opinion by then Judge Ginsburg, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they're actually citing from the dissent by Judge Bork, not the majority opinion. They don't tell you that. And yes, the dissent says that, but the majority has never said that. The law has always been that even when there is a delegation of authority, it's still got to be viewed within an overall context of the immigration scheme. And to view it the way they do would allow the president to take a magic eraser to the entire code. And obviously, the brief in that Texas case is not about establishment clause or anything like that.
We understand what that was about. But you also wrote a brief in Flores Villar.
I've been busy.
In which you said U.S. policy towards aliens is vitally and intricately interwoven with the conduct of foreign relations, a power that is likewise vested in the political branches, and any rule of constitutional law that would inhibit the flexibility of the political branches of government to respond to changing world conditions should be adopted only with the greatest caution.
Right. When I was in the government, I tried to get the Supreme Court to bite on that. They didn't. And I think but even still, look, we're not here saying that there's no, the president doesn't have emergency powers, national security powers. Of course he does. The question is, when you have a circumstance like this, when the very evidence that they have pointed to was before the Congress of the United States, and they said, we don't need this mass dragnet ban. Instead, we can do something more limited, require visas. That I think is all that is particularly telling. So obviously, if it's an emergency situation, it's a different matter. But that's not the world we're in. Indeed, the government points in its executive order to really only three things. They point to two people from Iraq who committed crimes, but Iraq is now exempt from the executive order, and someone from Somalia who came here as a refugee when he was 2 years old and committed crimes when he grew up, but the executive order exempts Somalia.
Suppose the president had adopted this second order or a third order and identified areas of active combat in some of these affected countries, or in those portions, carefully drawing the map like a legislative gerrymander, if you will, to identify areas where there has been terrorist activity, whether it's ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and narrowed it down to just those areas.
Yes.
Would that pass your muster?
I think it would. I mean, obviously it'll depend on the context, but I think it very much would, because that's exactly what Congress did in 2015. It didn't do nationality-based discrimination. This is what the district court found at page ER 61. Instead, if you isolate, where people have come and visited from, as the 2015 visa waiver program works, it doesn't work by where you're born. It works by what passport you hold. It works based on, where have you recently been? So if you're a Swiss citizen and you've gone to Sudan, you're covered by the 2015 ban, because precisely for the reason you're saying, Judge Hawkins, which is in 2015, Congress determined there might be some security threats in Sudan. But what this does is it says, if you're a Syrian and you're born in Switzerland, you spend your whole life in Switzerland, and then you want to come to the United States? Nope, flat ban. You can't come in just by dint of your nationality. That is not something presidents have ever done in our lifetimes.
Not quite as specific as Judge Hawkins' suggestion, but the order does refer to conditions in the countries that are listed. Wasn't that sufficient for purposes of facial legitimacy?
Again, that evidence was before the Congress in December 2015, and they said the solution is to require visas, nothing more than that. And so I don't think it's detrimental, to use Judge Gould's language, detrimental to the interests of the United States. Congress has already made that determination. But even if you
Well, but so the order, the first part of the order, the preamble and all the subsections of the preamble, section 1, it goes through the various countries and lists conditions in those countries. Now, the conditions that are described are not like what Judge Hawkins was alluding to, but they do make an attempt. Why isn't that sufficient?
Yeah, it's an attempt that was made before Congress in December 2015.
That's it?
Well, I think the other important point, as I was saying to Judge Hawkins, is if you really believed that, you wouldn't do it on the basis of nationality, because you do it on the basis of transit. That is, someone coming from one of those countries, regardless of what their nationality is, would be swept up by whatever the possible presidential action would be. That's how Congress did it, but that's the way to deal with that problem, not this. If I could, I just want to return to the colloquy that you all were having with my friend about Mandel and bad faith, because I do see that as quite important to the resolution of this case. Obviously, we think Mandel doesn't apply because of Washington versus Trump, but if for some reason you wanted to get into it, we think that the bad faith exception, or as the Mandel language itself calls it, bona fide, is enough to rule in our favor and to affirm the district court's injunction in this case. And the reason for that is that this court in Cardenas said that if there is bad faith, an affirmative showing of bad faith, then the Mandel standard is met and the action will be unconstitutional. Now, my friend on the
So if we don't consider the campaign statements, do you still prevail?
Oh, absolutely.
Why?
Because again, I think there's bad faith even past that. First of all, I think the president rekindled all of those campaign statements, but even beyond that, all the things that have happened afterwards, including leaving it up on the website, including I want to go back to the first ban, including I'm preferring Christians, big league, all those things, what he said to the Christian Broadcast Network on January 27th, all of those things I think are sufficient. Now, Mr. Wall says, oh, well, you should give more deference to the president than to a consular official. And in general, that may be true, but not when it comes to religion. Indeed, our founders were very worried about the possibility that one man could establish a religion, and certainly the president can. Any individual consular officer is not going to be able to establish a disfavored religion such as Islam. It's only something like the president. So the stakes actually are much higher when you're dealing with the president. And so I don't think that he gets any special deference, returning to Judge Hawkins, your earlier question.
Counsel Catmull, let me ask you this, and I don't mean to usurp your closing language, so we'll give you extra time if you need it. But there were letters issued by both the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. I think on the same day the second order was signed, which more or less gives support to the order and, say that there are national security reasons we need to do this. So do those letters neutralize your assertions that the national security interests relied on are pretextual, and also, or related to that, do they neutralize the bad faith argument? Because you're not just saying bad faith of the president, you'd have to be saying it's also bad faith of the Attorney General and also bad faith of the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Right. So it's certainly true that those letters were written on the morning of, saying would be nice to do an executive order like this, and then the executive order issues. And I think that those letters don't change the dynamics at all. Rather, the question is, as the district court found, and as all the amici before you found, is this executive order viewed from the standpoint of an objective observer, an establishment of a disfavored religion, Islam? And even if there is some national security motivation on the part of these cabinet secretaries, that doesn't eliminate the fundamental problem, which is that this executive...
If you guys are just joining us, you see in the right-hand corner of your screen, we're getting ready for the White House press briefing. That is coming up all the way on the East Coast in D.C. Sean Spicer will be leading that today at about 1:30. It's just past right now, so we'll see when he comes up to the podium. Hopefully it's shortly. We'll jump right in there with sound for you. so you can see what's going on live inside the White House. And we'll keep it inside this courtroom in Seattle for now until that comes up. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Go ahead and click subscribe on your YouTube stream if you like our live show coming at you from Washington, D.C., just live breaking news that you get to see in the middle of your day so you can kind of stay abreast of all the happenings and goings on across the country. Looks like it's coming up shortly, so we'll be inside the White House very soon.
To study the issues that they're talking about in the context of the order, to find out if there's more things that could be done in terms of vetting or procedures or transit or visa issuance, that sort of thing. Is there any justification for that portion of the order?
Yes.
For that interpretation?
So may I answer and then have about a half minute to sum up?
Yes, well, we're giving you extra time.
Wonderful.
So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I didn't really quite understand Mr. Wall's statement to the Fourth Circuit. He said, quote,
Well, I take Mr. Wall at his word. He said that they asked the district court, and he can tell us, they asked the judge in Hawaii, can we go ahead with these studies to determine if there are things that can be done? And I take it he was saying that in reaction to the judges on the Fourth Circuit and bank panel saying, why haven't you done this?
Exactly. So let me read to you his words in the Fourth Circuit and then go through it because it gets a little technical. This is what he said, quote, we went back to the Hawaii judge and said, look, you can't possibly have meant to enjoin internal governmental procedures to look at vetting for these 6 nations. And in the face of that motion, the district judge said yes. I don't think that's quite right. That is, they did ask to clarify the injunction, not with respect to the 6 countries and studying the 6 countries, but just generally, can they have internal consultation and the like?
I think he's supposed to arrive within 15 minutes, so as soon as the arrival happens, then we will begin, just to allow people. But we'll make sure we give you another heads up.
Lindsay, if you could do it like 2 minutes.
Yes, okay, we will, yes. But as soon as he gets here, we will go ahead and let you know.
Looks like there was a brief update from inside the White House that the president or Sean Spicer perhaps is still arriving to the White House. So it's looking like maybe 15 more minutes, and they're going to give a 2-minute warning. So we have a little bit to go to bring you in there. Stay with us if you're interested in watching Sean Spicer give the daily White House press briefing on all the president's events and what is happening this week, and take questions from the reporters in the room.
Conducting worldwide vetting and increased studies about all of these things. Every executive order.
Recently they do something along those lines with the laptops or something?
Not just laptops. 2 weeks ago, they announced in the Code of Federal Regulations an increase in vetting procedures worldwide. So the injunction doesn't ban studies at all. It only bans a specific study, which is a study designed to carry out what we view as the Muslim ban in Section 2A. And so the president has been conducting those studies as every executive.
We'll get a chance to hear from Mr. Wall.
Okay, great. If I could just sum up for 30 seconds or so. Last week, my friend Mr. Wall closed his argument by saying that the precedent here will transcend this case and this travel ban. And I couldn't agree more. If you rule for us, you leave intact the president's powers, including every decision that every president has made in our lifetimes, and you preserve a status quo that has existed for decades. If you rule for him, you defer to the president in a way that history teaches us is very dangerous. You open the door to so much. As Justice Jackson said in the context of the First Amendment in a religious freedom case, quote, the First Amendment was designed to avoid these ends by avoiding these beginnings. This very courthouse, which tried, convicted, and then later exonerated Gordon Hirabayashi 44 years ago, stands as a physical reminder about what is at stake. Our Constitution and laws are better than this. Our founders wanted America to be a beacon on our coast, and that beacon at the end of the day is not the quality of our sports teams or the quality of our soil. That beacon ultimately is the majestic Article 3 and the grand contours of the First Amendment. We ask that the district court's ruling enjoining this unconstitutional and un-American executive order be affirmed.
Thank you, counsel. Solicitor General Wall, you had reserved a couple of minutes, but we also went over time on the appellee's argument. So We'll give you extra time.
All right, guys, while we wait for the White House press briefing, let's switch gears a little bit. Did you guys hear about this story? A 14-year-old has become the youngest graduate or youngest person to ever graduate TCU, Texas Christian University, in Dallas-Fort Worth area. Let's check this out. We have footage of this graduation. Pretty cool for him. Watch him graduate. This is just a couple minutes long. Check out this video.
14-year-old Carson.
So there he is, guys. His name is Carson Huey Yu, and he's 14 years old. He graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Physics, and he plans to come back in the fall to get his Master's in Physics as well. So just a cool little video to bring you from Texas Christian University. All the commencements were this past week and this week, so we've been seeing a lot of that stuff in news. So we're going to bring you back to the courtroom simultaneously with preparing for the White House press briefing. For now, we'll bring you back over to that double shot screen here, and we'll wait for Sean Spicer next.
The entry of any class of aliens when he deems it in the nation's interest. And I know counsel wants to second guess the exercise of that power here, but he's right. Whatever this court says will govern president's exercise of that authority for years and decades to come. And no court has ever read into 1182F, ever, the kind of limitation, whether from 1152 or any other statute, that counsel wants to find in it. The last thing I'll say is just the overbreadth of this injunction. Counsel didn't mention the internal review provisions at all. He barely mentioned Section 6. Let me say a word about this. Sections 2A and 2B of the order say that the State Department and DHS and DNI are to look at our information sharing agreements with other countries and determine whether we have sufficient vetting procedures in place on the basis of the information we're getting from those countries, and they're supposed to produce a report. That was tied to the temporary suspension in a sense. The president said, because I'm not sure, I'm going to suspend, and that will free up resources to do the review. We went back to the district court, as counsel knows, and said, look, even if you give them the suspension of entry, which is all they've briefed and all that's in their complaint, it doesn't get you to the rest of Section 2, and it doesn't get you to Section 6. Surely we can still produce the report that is required by Sections 2A and 2B. And the district court, in the face of our motion, said, I enjoined all of Section 2 and all of Section 6. We have scrupulously complied with that injunction, but I want to be clear with the court. Even if we're wrong about standing, and even if we're wrong on the merits, the most he ought to be able to decisions from this court like mine hold is an injunction against 2C for Dr. El-Sheikh and his mother-in-law, or at most, in addition, any students whom Hawaii identifies if you conclude that Hawaii has standing. He is conflating the nature of his legal argument with the kind of relief to which his plaintiffs are entitled if their claim prevails on the merits. And Meinhold and other cases say no matter what the scope of his legal argument and what it would suggest about the propriety of the order, at most his clients get an injunction that redresses their injuries. Here, that's Dr. El-Sheikh and his mother-in-law and maybe a handful of students and 2C, not the rest of Section 2 and nothing in Section 6. Unlike the Fourth Circuit case, he doesn't have refugee groups, he doesn't have anybody seeking refugee admission. Section 6 and the refugee cap shouldn't even be on the table. And look, I'll wrap up in the same way. Yes, we did say to the Fourth Circuit last week that the precedent set by this case for the judiciary's role in reviewing the president's national security and immigration authority will long transcend this debate, this order, and this constitutional moment. Counsel is right that this country is a beacon, but what makes it a beacon is the rule of law. Under the settled legal rules for justiciability, constitutional and statutory interpretation, and injunctive relief, what the president did here falls squarely within his constitutional and statutory authority. I know they disagree with this president and many of his policy judgments, but none of that converts this into a constitutional crisis, and we respectfully submit that this court shouldn't treat it like one. It ought to leave this debate where it belongs, in the political arena. The United States respectfully submits that this injunction should be vacated or at a minimum substantially narrowed. Thank you, Your Honors.
Thank you, Solicitor General Wall. And thank you, Counsel Katchoff. The court appreciates the very high quality of the arguments on both sides. The court will now take a recess for, I would say this case is submitted at this point, and the court will take a recess for 20 minutes.
All right, and as the court takes that recess, we'll jump out of that scene in the courtroom there. Once again, 3 judges appointed by President Bill Clinton at the time are hearing this case, an appeal to Hawaii's challenge to President Trump's second travel ban on majority Muslim countries like Iran, Libya, Sudan, and those of the like. So that was the lawyers' closing arguments there. We'll bring you full screen into the White House press briefing room, which is coming up next with Sean Spicer. We'll hear from him addressing these journalists here in the room. And we'll probably close out the show with that. So stay tuned for the White House press briefing coming up next.
And then I'll just come back and tell Paul that tripod cable is it tilts for us. Never mind, I'll talk to you about that. Not your problem. I'll talk to you.
Plenty of room for everybody.
one of these ideas.
I've been there, I did it, but I didn't I've been there just twice actually.
The Crown Prince is arriving now. We're going to let him arrive. We'll go to the Oval. We'll come right back in here, and then we will begin.
Thanks.
So, just for your update, he is arriving now. So hopefully in the We'll give you, yes, we'll do our best to give a 2-minute or 5-minute.
Thank you.
But we're starting probably in 20 minutes from now.
Dubai is a city-state.
Yes.
So this is the crown prince.
I don't know if it's going to be
Yeah, it's not the crown prince of Dubai.
Anybody gets an update coming in. I'm going to answer your question.
Okay, look.
Okay, so here's the answer. CIA is actually, there are 7 Emirates. There's Abu Dhabi. So Abu Dhabi, Dubai is one of the 7.
Right, and this guy is the crown prince of one of the 7.
It's got to be like the Prince of Wales.
It's got to be the biggest.
But like Charles is the Prince of Wales.
I think we just don't confuse Then he goes to a question from.
Oh, so he is the he's the heir apparent. Got it. Should have asked.
Except I did go through the Thomas.
Yeah,
it's, so I went over there, so I was like, yeah. And I like looked at how much it was. Yeah, it was ridiculous. I know, right? I don't know who goes. I guess. Yeah, it's a big change. Yeah. And the mall, I went to the mall, like, yes, so I went to the mall, it was like much fancier than
and they have, that's where they have the indoor ski slope.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we just got word that the briefing will not start for another 10 or 20 minutes or so. It sounds like Sean Spicer is just arriving at the White House. So we're going to bring you back in case you missed it earlier. President Trump and the Vice President and some other officials were on Capitol Hill honoring fallen law enforcement officers as part of National Police Week. This was the 36th annual Peace Officers Memorial right outside the Capitol. We're going to listen into President Trump's words during that ceremony. I'm going to bring you back there just so you can listen in case you missed it earlier this morning. Check it out.
Loved ones have for them will last forever, and the contribution they made to our great country will never be forgotten. Their names are not only engraved on the National Peace Officers Memorial Wall, they are engraved on the fabric of America and in our hearts. To you, the survivors, I say that our thoughts and prayers are always with you. Our resolve to go on is made stronger by knowing that while we have your backs, you have ours. You will always be advocates for your law enforcement family, and we count on you to provide your prayers and your well wishes to us as we go about performing our duty. The thin blue line will never be broken, and the memory of your loved ones will remain in our hearts forever. God bless you, the families of all of our heroes, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you. I now feel like the luckiest police officer in the history of this country because it's my honor to introduce our next speaker. Mr. President, it's a great privilege to honor and to have you here to honor the families of our fallen heroes. It has been a difficult time for law enforcement in our country, as you know. More officers are being targeted for violence simply because of their uniform. In pledging to serve and protect, they willingly place themselves in harm's way. But now, all too often, harm is seeking them out, and they find themselves in the crosshairs of individuals consumed with hatred for police and who are determined to kill them. Mr. President, on the campaign trail, you often spoke of your support for law enforcement officers, and you made a commitment to help us make America and our officers on the beat safe again. In your first days of office, you began to deliver on that promise, demonstrating that you'll be a partner and not a critic of our nation's law enforcement officers. Every officer needs a partner on the beat. Mr. President, we see you as that partner in the years to come. We appreciate your leadership, and we are so very grateful to have you with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, please help me welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you, everybody. Wow. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you, Chuck. That was so nice. That was above and beyond. That's the way I'm going to be with you, too. And it's a great honor. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to address America's heroes on this most solemn occasion. Words cannot express the depths of our gratitude, but I hope that our actions will show you how deeply we care and how strongly we feel about protecting those who protect us. America stands strong with our men and women in blue. Believe me, we stand strong together. I want to recognize Jim Pasco, Linda Henney, Chaplain Wiggins, and everyone at the Fraternal Order of Police for all that you do to protect the law enforcement of this country and all of our communities. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. As long as I'm president, you will always find an open door to the White House. And you've already found it, believe me. Mr. Vice President, Cabinet Secretaries, and members of Congress, we are gathered here today at the U.S. Capitol to pay tribute to those brave law enforcement officers who gave their lives in the line of duty. On this police officers' Memorial Day, we thank God for having blessed so many of us with such incredible heroes, and we pledge our solidarity with their families and loved ones, and many of those great families and survivors are here with us today, and I'd love you to stand up. Families and survivors, what great, incredible people. And your loved ones are looking down on you right now, believe me, and they're very proud. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Whatever you need, we are here for you, and we are praying for you. As I look out today at this amazing assembly of police, detectives, marshals, and sheriffs, I want to make all of you remember and heed this promise. I will always support the incredible men and women of law enforcement as much as you have always supported me. And you did. Big league. Your presence here reminds us all of what is at stake on this sacred day of remembrance. Each May during Police Week, new names of fallen police officers are added to the National Law Enforcement Memorial. This year, 394 brave souls joined the over 20,000 men and women who gave up their lives in the line of duty to protect us. The names of these heroes are not only carved into that wall, but carved into the hearts of the American people. And by the way, the American people love you more than you will ever know. I can tell you that. Though your loved ones left us much too soon, the memory of their courage will live on forever. To see so many names together is to gain only a small glimpse of the debt America owes to those who protect our cities and police on our streets. We are privileged this morning to be joined by families of the fallen, to whom we owe that ultimate loyalty. So many people, even back here. Please know that you do not grieve alone. Though we cannot fathom the depths of your loss, nor fully appreciate the bond that forms in the precinct and between partners on the beat, your sadness is left and felt by all of us. Every drop of blood spilled from our heroes in blue is a wound inflicted upon the whole country. And every heartache known by your families in law enforcement is a sorrow shared by the entire family of the American nation. No one asked these selfless men and women to enlist in this righteous cause or to enroll as foot soldiers in the eternal struggle against crime and violence. They joined the cause because their hearts were big and full of amazing courage. They joined because they cared so deeply for the innocent and helpless and forgotten. They put on the uniform because they believed to the very core of their souls that it was their mission in life to serve and to protect. As the Bible tells us, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. The names and stories on that wall are each a testament to this pure and unselfish love. And that's what it is, pure and unselfish love. And it is our duty as a people and as a nation to prove worthy of their sacrifice. And that begins with showing our police the appreciation they have earned 1,000 times over. Living in New York, I gained a deep appreciation and lasting admiration for law enforcement. Thousands of people are living and enjoying life today in New York who otherwise would be gone because our great police fought to bring safety to our streets and our communities. The entire world witnessed the heroism of New York's finest when they gave their lives on 9/11. I was there and sacrificed so much in that brutal, horrible aftermath. Now, as president, my highest duty is to keep America safe. We will keep America safe. And included in safe means safe from crimes, safe from terrorism, and safe from all enemies, foreign and domestic. At the center of that duty is the requirement to ensure that our law enforcement personnel are given the tools and resources they need to do their jobs and to come home to their families safely. You are the thin blue line between civilization and chaos. You come from every community and all walks of life. You are mothers and fathers and sons and daughters. You rush into unknown danger, risking your lives for people you have never met, people you don't know, performing your duty under the most difficult conditions, and often without any thanks at all. Because you do not hear nearly enough I want you to know that patriotic Americans of all backgrounds truly support and love our police. And a very sad thing is that many of today's politicians don't want to say that, don't want to talk about that, because it's not politically correct, or they think it might hurt them with the voters. I will say it, and I will talk about it proudly. I will make it the personal priority of my administration to ensure that our police are finally treated fairly, with honor and respect that they deserve. To all Americans watching this event today, next time you see a cop on the beat, take a moment to say two wonderful words which they so readily deserve. Thank you. Thank you. As you all know, much too well, we are living through an era in which our police have been subject to unfair defamation and vilification, and even, really, I mean, you see what's going on. You see what's going on. Even worse, hostility and violence. More officers were slain last year in ambushes than in any year in more than 2 decades, including, and that's so incredible to even have to be speaking about this, the beloved officers killed in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in yet another murderous attack of law enforcement. And we have some of those incredible families and survivors with us. Thank you. The attacks on our police are a stain on the very fabric of our society, and you are entitled to leadership at the highest level that will draw a bright line in the sand, not a red line in the sand that isn't gone over, but a bright line in the sand, and we will protect you, that I can tell you, and we will say enough is enough. The attacks on our police must end, and they must end right now. And just to show you, by the way, how much I love our police, I said, oh, I'm going to need a hat because it's so windy today. I said, when I get out here, there's no way I'm going to put on this hat. So we'll leave off the hat. And this is for you, Micah. That's for our beautiful Micah down there. We must also end the reckless words of incitement that give rise to danger and give rise to violence. It is time to work with our cops, not against them, but to support them in making our streets safe, not to obstruct them, which we're doing. We obstruct them. It is time for all Americans from all parties and beliefs to join together in a simple goal: to ensure that every child in America has the right to grow up in safety, security, and peace. True social justice means a future where every child in every neighborhood can play outside without fear, can walk home safely from school, and can live out the beautiful dreams that fill their heart. like you, Micah.
Just a reminder, guys, you're watching President Trump's remarks from earlier at the 36th Annual Peace Officers Memorial at the Capitol building. We are awaiting Sean Spicer down in the right-hand corner of your screen. That will come full screen next. We'll be hearing from him at the White House press briefing, so stay with us for that coverage.
These two guys. When policing is reduced, it's often the poorest and most vulnerable Americans who are the first to suffer. We have all seen the tragic rise in violence and crimes in many of our disadvantaged communities. We've seen the unbearable horror of the shortcomings in Baltimore and Chicago that have cut short so many lives and so many beautiful, beautiful dreams. We cannot stand for such violence. We cannot tolerate such pain. We cannot, under any circumstances, any longer turn a blind eye to this suffering that's going on any longer, and we won't. It's time for a grateful nation to join hands with our police and with our sheriffs to build the bridges of cooperation and trust and to make our streets safer for every man, woman, and child.
Taking you guys over now to a press conference in Philadelphia about the overturned charter bus in Maryland this morning. It happened about 40 miles north of Baltimore. Check this out. This is a live press conference going on in Philadelphia.
And again, keep in mind and in your thoughts and prayers the individuals that were hurt and are still in the hospital, and those kids who probably went through a terrible traumatic experience today on the way to Washington, D.C. for a field trip. So we'll do our best to get you as much information as possible as it goes forward. A lot of rumors, of course, with these kind of things are all out there. When we're not going to confirm anything until we know for sure what has been said already by the superintendent is the stuff that we have confirmed. So just wish everyone well and get our kids back as soon as we can. Thank you.
Dr. Hyde, yes. You said one teacher seriously injured and one student.
Yes.
What about injuries to the other students? Like I said, there were some minor ones. Can you tell us about that?
Those students are being diagnosed at this time, and because they're at 5 different places, naturally it's difficult to get information about exactly the extent of their injuries. But we're continuing to work with representatives in Maryland and with those hospitals to get more information.
And you said 26 children, one parent chaperone, and you said 30. I was maybe I was miscounting.
Yeah, so there were 26 students, 2 teachers, 1 parent chaperone, and the driver.
That brings it to 30.
How are kids at the school notified that their friends have been in an accident?
But we have individuals at schools, the principal, and we have staff members at the school, both our staff from this office, from the school district, along with behavioral health, who's there to provide counseling services, along with counselors from the school district. And so we are notifying those individuals. But more importantly, it's really our first notification has been to the families of these young people and adults who were involved in this accident.
What time do they think the school is working?
I do not have that information.
So how many field trips a year by the school district? Yes, they may have a rough estimate.
I don't have that information, Bernard.
What grade are these kids in?
These are all 8th graders.
Was it the entire 8th grade or just some of the 8th grade?
No, I believe it was 2 classes of 8th graders, a representative group of 2 classes from the 8th grade there.
Do you know how many students total in the 8th grade there?
I do not.
And where were they on their way to?
They were on their way to Washington, D.C. for an 8th grade field trip. I don't have the specific information about the field trip. We can get all of that to you.
Have you been able to reach the parents of all the children who were involved?
We have reached most of the parents. We've been unable to reach several of the parents. We've left messages and planning to go by the addresses that we have for those individuals. And so we will continue to reach out until we've made contact with every single parent.
Was it just a day trip?
It was just a day trip, yes.
As far as you know, Dr. Hyde, are there any life-threatening situations or
We don't have the extent of the injuries, and if we did, Vernon, until we know specifically about the severity of the injuries, we know that 2 people were critically injured, but we are not releasing those details at this time.
With the exception of the child in Delaware, are most of them in Maryland hospitals?
We believe so. I mean, we think because of the sheer difficulty in taking young people to 5 different places. And we have staff who are already down in Maryland. Staff from my team are down there, and we have other staff members who are on the way.
Are you asking parents to go down there, or do you want parents to stay here?
We have a unification site at the C.W. Henry School, and we will start there. If, in fact, we have parents who absolutely need to get down there, we're trying to arrange for transportation for those individuals.
Would it be like a carpool situation?
Yes.
Carpool
Yes.
or bus service? Carpool or bus service?
We'd have to see how many would need transportation.
Can you describe the transportation plan for reunification? Are you running district buses down there, chartering other buses?
No, we are running district buses down, and we have staff on district buses who are headed down as we speak. And I have staff who went earlier in automobiles who are there already at least one of the hospitals.
Any indication, I mean, I know it's probably difficult to tell whether this bus was cut off or how this happened in the very beginning?
There's no indication. I mean, and these are all reports now, but it was all we know is a multi-car accident. We don't have specific information, and I think the investigation is still ongoing, according to the Maryland State Police.
Have you heard from the charter company, the bus charter company? Have they told you anything?
We have been in contact with the charter company, just in communication, but naturally, we are trying to communicate with the parents more than anything right now.
Does the driver of the charter company given any indication of?
We don't have any of that information at the moment.
Does the school charter the bus, or does the district charter?
The school charters the bus for the field trip.
Do you know if any of the children have been released yet, and if so, is there a plan to bring them back home?
Yes, I understand several children have been released, and that's one of the reasons we have a bus heading down there now.
Where are they being held?
There is a reunification center that has been set up in Maryland as well, and we will then have all of the children who are being released sent to that reunification center.
Are there people already there?
We have people already there, yes.
All right, we'll keep you guys informed as developments.
Thank you. Thanks.
For those reports, I need some background info.
So once again, guys, that was Philadelphia administrators and part of the school system there giving an update on the accident that you see in the lower right-hand corner of your screen that was earlier this morning. It happened around 9:30 a.m. in Havre de Grace, Maryland. It sounds like 26 kids were on their way to D.C. for a school field trip event. And that is what you see there. That's what happened, the overturned bus on Interstate 95. So just a brief update there from the Philadelphia school system. We are going to be bringing you the White House press briefing next. That is coming up full screen. I'm going to bring you that shot right now.
Good afternoon. Before we get started, I want to bring Homeland Security Tom Boster back up here to discuss the administration's response to the ransomware hacking. And then I'll go on with the events of today and answer your questions. Without further ado, Tom.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Tom Boster. I'm the Assistant to the President for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism. And if I could, I'd like to start today by acknowledging the fallen police officers that the President and Vice President acknowledged today. They are the front lines of our Homeland Security, and the event today was an honor for me to attend. On cybersecurity, as the President's Homeland Security Advisor, part of my responsibility is to coordinate U.S. government cybersecurity efforts. I want to give you an update today on the ransomware attack that's been known as WannaCry or WannaCrypt. We continue closely monitoring the situation around the clock at the highest levels of government. We're bringing all of the capabilities of the U.S. government to bear on this issue and are working side by side with our partners in the private sector and our international partners. I spoke moments ago with my counterpart in Great Britain and learned an update from them that they have a feeling of control over this ransomware event, and that as their affected computers seem to have been tied to the fact that their healthcare system is so large and networked. They are painfully aware, though, of the fact that this is a global attack, as are we. As of this morning, it has reached approximately 150 countries and infected more than 300,000 machines. The good news is the infection rates have slowed over the weekend. We had been concerned about that when last we talked. The ransomware has disrupted telecommunications companies, hospitals, and other organizations. The UK National Healthcare Service announced 48 of its organizations were affected, and that resulted in inaccessible computers and telephone service, but an extremely minimal effect on and disruption to patient care. That was something quite evident in my conversation. Computers at the Spanish telecommunications company Telefonica were compromised, and we had a small number of affected parties in the U.S., including FedEx. Secretary Kelly at the Department of Homeland Security continues to lead operations and public-private coordination. His team is issuing twice daily situation reports, is holding multiple calls per day among experts and operations centers managing our response. As of today, no federal systems are affected. Overall, the U.S. infection rate has been lower than many parts of the world, but we may still see significant impacts in additional networks as these malware attacks morph and change. Despite appearing to be criminal activity intended to raise money, it appears that less than $70,000 has been paid in ransoms, and we are not aware if payments have led to any data recovery. The Cyber Threat Intelligence Integration Center is also keeping us informed of the classified insights concerning the investigation into these hacks. And let me talk about now briefly the way ahead. Sorry about that. It's important for our business and individuals to know that 3 variants of this ransomware are reported to have emerged using similar techniques. We had talked last I was here about variants of this malware. If you follow the mitigation advice published by DHS, the FBI, and Microsoft, and have patched your systems, you are protected against all of these variants. It's also important to know that pirated, stolen, or otherwise unlicensed versions of affected software often will not receive patches, so it's important to not use that unlicensed software. If you do, you'll be subject to extraordinarily susceptible infection. While it would be satisfying to hold accountable those responsible for this hack, something that we are working on quite seriously, the worm is in the wild, so to speak, at this point, and patching is the most important message as a result. Business and government have responded with upgrades and patches, defensive mitigations, and this has dramatically reduced the vulnerable population over the last 3 days. So this needs to continue to be our focus. Let me finish by repeating advice that all organizations be vigilant in updating their software, and that the only computers that can be compromised by the WannaCry or WannaCrypt virus are ones that do not have the latest security patches available from Microsoft.
So what's the net effect? Tom, do you have any, so this is one episode of malware or ransomware. Do you know if, from the documents and the other cyber hacking tools that were stolen from NSA, if there was potentially more out there?
So there's a little bit of a double question there. Part of that has to do with the underlying vulnerability exploit here used. I think if I could, I'd rather, instead of directly answering that, and can't speak to how we do or don't do our business as a government in that regard, I'd like to instead point out that this was a vulnerability exploit as one part of a much larger tool that was put together by the culpable parties and not by the U.S. government. So this was not a tool developed by the NSA to hold ransom data. This was a tool developed by culpable parties, potentially criminals or foreign nation states, that have put it together in such a way so as to deliver it with phishing emails, put it into embedded documents, and cause infection, encryption, and locking. So the provenance, I think I said this morning, of the underlying vulnerability is something that is a little bit less of a direct point for me.
I guess a shorter way to put it would be, is there more out there that you're worried about could lead to more attacks in the future?
I actually think that the United States, more than probably any other country, is extremely careful with their processes about how they handle any vulnerabilities that they're aware of. That's something that we do when we know of the vulnerability, not when we know we lost the vulnerability. I think that's a key distinction between us and other countries and other adversaries that don't provide any such consideration to their people, customers, or industry.
You mentioned your British counterparts are feeling a sense of control. Was there any time, as you monitored this here in the States, where you felt there was any lack of control or this could get out of hand here? And if not, what is it about what was here that was protected that didn't exist, for example, in Europe or other parts that have obviously taken a much bigger hit from this?
Yeah, no comparative lack of control, but my conversation today led me to believe that he felt quite comfortable and my counterparts felt quite comfortable with where they stood today. Not comparing.
But was there any time that you felt here that things could spiral out of control?
Well, as we were gaining and gathering more information, it was important for us to determine the parameters of this. Once we got our hands around the parameters of the malware, that's of course in the beginning moments what you're trying to get a hold of. Get the malware, analyze it, determine what's happening. In that time frame, you don't feel entirely in control, but you're searching for information. Once we got it and realized what the situation was, we realized there were patches available and had been available since March. And so from that point, operations centers and communications become the key, and they're imperative to how we handle this response. And from the British perspective, I thought it was important to pass along from them 2 points. One, that they thought it was an extremely small number of patients that might have been inconvenienced, not necessarily a disruption to their clinical care as opposed to their administrative processes. And two, that they felt that some of those reports might have been misstated or overblown given how they've gotten themselves into a position of patching. So we'll have to do the analysis and the investigation later as to why certain organizations, systems, or sectors were more greatly affected than others. So that's the point I'd like to elaborate. If I could, one more here,
yeah,
please.
Just bottom line for the average consumer, and what are you going to do going forward to make sure that it doesn't get out in the open and affect us anymore?
Bottom line for the consumer is patch your software, provide automated patch support if you can, turn that automated on. Make sure your IT service providers or IT folks within your organizations are patching your software. That's the bottom line, and this particular malware and the 3 reported variants that we've seen since are all fixable with patch, and that's something that you can get from Microsoft. So that's our bottom line, and I don't want to encroach too much here into Mr. Spicer's time, but if I could, with that, maybe I have one more question, Sean, okay?
Who did it?
We don't know. That's the attribution that we're after right now. It would be very satisfying for me and for all of our viewers, I think, that if we find them, that we bring them to justice. I think that's something that sometimes eludes us. Attribution can be difficult here. I don't want to say we have no clues. As I stand here today, I feel that the best and brightest are working on that. So thank you very much. I'll let you know. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. The President was pleased to see this morning the National Association of Home Builders and Wells Fargo announced earlier that recent reports show that U.S. home builder confidence continues to rise, with numbers now at their strongest since the housing bust. According to the NABH's chairman, quote, "This report shows that builders' optimism in the housing market is solidifying. We've already seen tremendous response in the economy in the wake of the president's pro-growth agenda. The unemployment rate is at the lowest it's been in a decade. Manufacturing job openings are higher than they've ever been since 2006. And by nearly every measure of economic confidence, the future of the American economy looks very bright." The president is also glad to see businesses once again making significant investments in America, from Intel to General Motors to Walmart to Apple, who specifically just announced earlier this month that will start a $1 billion fund to promote advanced manufacturing jobs here in the United States. And it's not just the president's domestic economic policies that are generating optimism. Just last week, we announced the first 10 agreements as part of the 100-day action plan initiated by President Trump during his meeting at Mar-a-Lago with President Xi of China. As I noted last week, these arrangements are major wins for American companies across many different industries and sectors, from natural gas to beef exporters to financial services, who will all now have access to the massive Chinese market. And of course, those negotiations continue between our representatives. We look forward to sharing future developments with you as this process continues to unfold. This morning, the President and the Vice President joins tens of thousands of officers and friends of law enforcement at the annual Peace Officers Memorial Service at the United States Capitol. This is the 36th year that the Fraternal Order of Police has honored the memory of the brave men and women who've lost their lives in the line of duty with this service and ceremony. In the Vice President's opening remarks, he reiterated the Trump administration's commitment to standing with the men and women of law enforcement, quote, without apology. And the President said that these men and women are, quote, the thin blue line between civilization and chaos. Words cannot express the depth of our gratitude, end quote, but he hopes that the actions of this administration will show our men and women in blue, quote, how deeply we care and how strongly we feel about protecting those who protect us all, end quote. Earlier today, the President had the honor of meeting with officers and guests from police departments that recently suffered the loss of a police officer from Ulster County Sheriff's Department, Phoenix Police Department, and the New Jersey State Troopers. He also signed a proclamation in honor of Peace Officers Memorial Day and National Police Week. The President was honored to just welcome recently, in the last few minutes, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi to the White House for an official visit. His Highness is a strong partner of the United States and a leader in the Middle East on a number of important topics, including defense cooperation, regional security, and counterterrorism. The United States and the UAE recently concluded a defense cooperation agreement that will allow us to work more closely together to address common security threats. The President hopes to work together even more closely to resolve regional conflicts that raged across the region for too long. This is the President and His Highness's first meeting. They have a lot to discuss, including bilateral trade and investment, as well as regional security issues. At the conclusion of the meeting, we will make sure to have a readout. Later this afternoon, the Vice President will swear in Robert Lighthizer as the United States Trade Representative. Ambassador Lighthizer has spent decades working at the highest levels of American trade policy, including as Deputy U.S. Trade Representative under President Reagan. The President is glad to finally have an unquestionably qualified individual in place as we fight for better trade deals that will put the American worker first. And now that he's officially on board this afternoon, Ambassador Lighthizer is getting straight to work. Tomorrow, he will have a series of meetings on Capitol Hill, and on Thursday, he will travel to Vietnam for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meetings. With Ambassador Lighthizer swearing in after a historic show of obstructionism by the Senate Democrats, the President will now finally have his entire cabinet in place, able to fully implement the President's America First agenda across the entire spectrum of the federal government. In other cabinet news, Secretary Chow kicked off Infrastructure Week with an event with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce this morning, noting the newly reopened I-85 bridge in Atlanta as an example of what can be better accomplished with federal, state, and local governments working together. Secretary Chow will be traveling to Atlanta on Thursday for the ceremonial ribbon cutting. Secretary Perry is in Texas today as part of VA Research Week to announce the VETS Project, a joint effort between the Veterans Administration and the Department of Energy to help data map veterans' health records and solve health-related issues for veterans. This partnership, part of the Trump administration's commitment to modernizing the systems we use to care for our nation's heroes, brings together the VA's unparalleled healthcare and genetic data from its Million Veteran program with the Department of Energy's world-class technology to improve health care and quality of life for our veterans. Secretary Shulkin of the VA will also be traveling this week to commemorate VA Research Week, speaking at the Brain Trust Pathways event in Boston on Wednesday. This event brings together public and private experts in research, treatment, prosthetics, IT, and other specialties to focus on new and innovative ways to support veterans coping with the effects of traumatic brain injury and head trauma. The State Department also had a few briefings today on the next step in addressing the Assad regime and the horrors it has committed on the Syrian people. The Trump administration believes that Syria's political future should be decided by Syrians in a free, credible, and transparent process. However, we also believe that in a free process, it's unimaginable that Syrians will choose to continue under the Assad's leadership. Syria will never be stable and secure as long as Assad is in power. The Assad regime has sunk to a new level of depravity, and it has done so with seemingly unconditional support from Russia and Iran. For these reasons, we continue to support the political transition process contained in UN Security Resolution 2254 and support the political process taking place under UN oversight in Geneva. As we've said before, the United States remains open to working together with both Russia and Iran to find a solution that leads to a stable and united Syria. But in order for us to work together to bring an end to the violence in Syria, Russia and Iran need to acknowledge the atrocities of the Assad regime and use their influence to stop them. As you can see, it's going to be a busy week for the president, the cabinet, and the staff leading up to the president's first foreign trip that launches this Friday. We take off for Saudi Arabia later on Friday, and I plan to have General McMaster here hopefully tomorrow to walk through the trip with further detail. And with that, your questions.
Thank you, Sean. Just in China, NSC Senior Director Pottinger say the U.S. is forming a Belt and Road working group and say the U.S. company have much to offer. So what's the perspective of the U.S. future collaboration in this Belt and Road initiative?
Yeah, as I mentioned with respect to the 100-day plan, I think there's a lot of areas that we are going to continue to work with China to develop a way forward. I think the relationship that the president established with President Xi down in Mar-a-Lago is continuing to pay dividends for our country. And whether it's this policy or trade or market access, we're going to continue to see all of those individuals from the president's cabinet that were down in Mar-a-Lago continue to work with their counterparts in China to find a path forward. John.
Sean, a couple of topics, but first of all, back on what you said about Syria. Is the official policy of this administration now regime change in Syria?
I think I've made it very clear what our policy is and continues to be.
Over the weekend, a lot of complaints from Democrats about the Comey replacement process. First of all, that Jeff Sessions is leading the search. A lot of Democrats think that because he recused himself from the Russian investigation, he should not be in that position. Secondly, some Democrats in the Senate are saying that before they will consider the president's next nominee, they want a special prosecutor appointed to look into the Russia investigation. Can you respond to both of them?
I think this is a process that's running completely as it should, as being headed by the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General. As we've noted in the past, the FBI Director reports to the Deputy Attorney General. They continue to move through a series of highly qualified candidates. And it's, obviously this is a huge priority for the President to make sure that we have someone that has the ability to administer the proper leadership to the FBI.
Like, on the special prosecutor?
I think there's frankly no need for a special prosecutor. We've discussed this before. You have two Senate committees that are looking into this. The FBI is conducting their own review. And I think if you even look at what Acting Director McCabe said last week, he made it very clear that they have the resources that they need and that the work continues. But the bottom line is, again, I think part of it is there's a difference between what we've talked about in that, and it's been made very clear that there's been, with respect to the president himself, both Senator Schumer, Senator Feinstein, Senator Manchin, and everyone else who have been briefed on this have been very clear that there was no collusion with respect to the president himself and no investigation there. Blake.
Thank you. Let me pick up what Mr. Foster left off about this ransomware attack. In the short term, a short-term question, a long-term question. In the short term, is it the advice of the administration, should somebody have their computer system infected, not to pay the ransom?
As I said, I think that what we have seen so far that is the most effective is that if people take the necessary proper steps in advance and use the patches that are available to ensure that it doesn't happen. So prevention is right now the key that we're stressing.
As it relates to the long term, at the end of the day, this is extortion from likely hostile foreign actors. Might the administration set some sort of guidelines or policies as it relates to U.S. individuals, U.S. companies? Should they be approached as to what to do and maybe what not to do?
Yeah, I think we can. Our immediate goal right now is to make sure that we're protecting our both individual, commercial, and government enterprises, and that work has proved to be the prudent steps that were taken have proven to be fruitful, and I think we're going to continue that. Right now, obviously, that's the number one priority.
Do you know why he mentioned FedEx? Do you know if that was something specific happened to FedEx?
I don't. I can have Tom follow up. Jim. Fred, I'm sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, we can always I wanted to ask about the Election Integrity Commission. Is this is the primary goal of this going to be looking for recommending reforms to possible federal laws like the NVRA, or looking at cleaning the rolls, or is it going to be more of an audit of the 2016 election?
The executive order that the president signed and the vice president and Secretary of State Kobach are leading is a bipartisan commission of the state elections officials that are going to look at all aspects of election integrity, including voter fraud, improper registration, and allegations of voter suppression. So I think they're looking at this holistically.
Okay, and one more. As far as North Korea goes, with the new South Korean government coming in, does the administration advise against their reaching out or outstretched hand that they had towards the North Korean regime, particularly after?
I'm sorry, say the
new South Korean government. Is the administration advising against South Korea reaching out to North Korea after this weekend's missile test?
I think the president looks forward to having a conversation with the new president and discussing the way forward, but I'm not going to get ahead of that discussion at this point. John.
Thanks a lot, Sean. On the search for the new FBI director, the president today said that it's moving rapidly. One name that was put forward over the course of the past 24 hours by the Senate Majority Leader is that of Merrick Garland. Is that a name that the president would possibly consider in the move to name a new FBI director?
The search for a new FBI director is being handled by the Department of Justice. My expectation would be that once they've conducted that search, they'll present names for consideration of the president, but they are the ones that are leading that effort. So, Alexis.
Sean, can I follow up on the tape question from last week? As you know, several Republicans have joined Democrats in seeking additional information from the White House in writing about the existence of any tapes, producing the tapes, and any further information about the potential taping of conversations. Is the White House intending to cooperate with those requests and furnish that information as requested in writing?
I think I made it clear last week that the president has nothing further on that. Hunter.
Wait, Sean. Does that mean that the president will deny?
I think I said I was very clear that the president would have nothing further on that last week.
Situation which the president would defy the legislative branch's request. That's what
I
you're
understand,
saying.
Alexis. I made it clear what the president's position is on that issue. Hunter.
People clearly still have concerns about Russia's role in the election, even though the president has essentially said there's nothing to it. If there is nothing to hide, why not back a special prosecutor or independent commission just to settle it beyond any doubt?
Well, again, it's not a question of it's at what point you have a House committee, a Senate committee, the FBI. I don't know why you need additional resources when you already have 3 entities.
Well, we saw polling this weekend from NBC News and
I understand that, but
that's 80% of people want this, and they don't have confidence. In
right. I, with all due respect, I think the bottom line is you have 3 entities already looking into this matter. I think the president's position has been very clear that there's 2 issues at hand. One is the involvement of Russia potentially in with respect to an election, and then the president's involvement. The FBI director and others have made it very clear that the president's not a subject of anything. I think we have plenty of entities looking into that. Trey.
Sean, 2 questions for you. On North Korea, is there a new sense of urgency for President Trump to act following the successful ballistic missile test over the weekend?
I think there's no question that North Korea continues to threaten the United States, our allies, Japan, South Korea, and its neighbors, including both China and Russia. I think we are calling on all of those folks in the region, particularly China and Russia, to do everything they can in terms of sanctions to help resolve the situation and bring stability to the peninsula.
On a quick domestic issue, what characteristics is President Trump looking for in an FBI director?
I think obviously he wants someone with high integrity and the leadership skills to lead the entity, but I have not specifically discussed the qualities with him. Richard.
Thank you, Sean. 2 questions. First one, you told us over and over that for NAFTA we were waiting for Lighthizer, Robert Lighthizer to be confirmed. Now he's going to be sworn in. Can you give us a better idea on the pace of the renegotiation of NAFTA now that we have a trade representative?
Well, I think I'd have to check this calendar, but I think we've got an hour or 2 before he's actually sworn in. So you may want to give him a little bit of time.
Okay, Can we say
I don't, because until he's sworn in and assumes positions, as I mentioned, he's going to immediately go up to Capitol Hill and then off to APEC in Vietnam. So I'm sure we'll get around to it. But right now, we still need to just go through the process of getting him sworn in. Jim.
Just last week, quickly, H.R. Ambassador touched the topic, but when the president will be with NATO allies, is he going to ask for a larger, bigger involvement in Afghanistan with troops on the ground from the members?
I'm not going to get into what he will say or will not say. It's hell of an opportunity to make his position very clear when he goes and visit.
Allies with soldiers.
I think he hasn't even. I don't think. We haven't announced the Afghan strategy yet. I think he's been very clear with respect to NATO. There's two issues. One is he'd like to see a greater effort placed on counterterrorism and on combating terrorism. And two is to see more of the countries live up to their financial obligation that they agreed to. Jim, sorry.
Thank you, Sean. A two-part question. Is President Trump still committed to his 15% corporate tax rate? He's also under pressure to keep some existing loopholes, such as the eliminating the state income tax write-off for high state taxes such as New York and California. So is he committed to the 15% corporate tax rate, and is he also full steam ahead on getting rid of the write-off for high tax states?
Well, Secretary Mnuchin and Director Cohen outlined the principles of his tax reform plan. We continue to meet with stakeholders and members of Capitol Hill. But that conversation continues. As I said at the outset, they're continuing to meet with individuals. And those are part of those talks. So his plan has been pretty clear from the beginning as far as what he wants to see and the framework in which it's being guided.
Should low tax states, though, subsidize these higher tax states, because places like Florida and Tennessee can't write off zero income taxes?
Again, I'm not going to get ahead of that debate. I think the principles that were outlined explain where the president's starting point is. He's going to continue to have those discussions. Amen.
Thanks, John. On the search for the new FBI director, there have been some critics who have said in this particular political climate, whoever it is shouldn't be a current or former politician. We saw the list of people who've been interviewed, and we see that at least two of them are either current or former political figures. Does the president have a feeling on whether or not having held elective office is a plus or a minus to hold that job?
I don't, as I mentioned just a minute ago, I've not talked to him about the specific qualities he's looking forward to seeing, but I know the Department of Justice continues to meet with these individuals, and so we'll have to see who they put forward. Hallie.
Thanks, John. I have two questions for you, but I guess I'm just looking for some clarity on one of my colleagues' questions here. Why won't you just explain whether or not there are recordings of
I think the president's made it clear what his position is.
That's not my question. So
I
why
understand
won't
that
you
because
explain?
that's what the president's position is.
So given that you refuse to confirm or deny any of this, how is any senior official supposed to feel comfortable having a conversation privately with the president?
As I've said, Hallie, the president's made it clear what his position is.
Even with these congressional lawmakers
Hallie,
calling to
I've
see
asked
if they exist.
Hallie, I've answered the question over and over again the same way. So
So the second question that I have for you then is on the arguments that are happening now in the Ninth Circuit regarding the administration's travel ban. One of the lines of questioning has been why the president has not disavowed his Muslim ban. Will he do that?
The president, the executive order is fully lawful and will be upheld. We fully believe that. I think there's no question. In fact, in one of the arguments in the previous cases, it was made clear that if anyone else had proposed this, which just shows that it is legally sound, people are misinterpreting it. It was based on the law and the authority that the president rightfully has. That's it, plain and simple. And that's
my question is more: will he disavow the ban?
But
he's never said it.
Right.
The
point
lawyer
is,
said he did say he never has.
But the point is that the ban, the measures that he took in that executive order are fully lawful, fully compliant, and make it clear that they seek to keep this country safe. That's it.
But given
Richard.
these questions come up, is there any indication the president will come out and say, yes, I disavow what I said about letting
Right now, the president's focused on making sure that we make the appropriate arguments to get the ban in place.
Thank you. That's okay. Considering, in contrast to much of the expression during the French presidential election, and that has been reported in France especially, there may be a lot more in common between President Trump and the new President Emmanuel Macron of France. Both former successful businessmen, both leaders of two very powerful countries, and two of the oldest allies going, basically. Knowing this, would the president look forward to an opportunity to bring this young president closer to him, maybe meeting on the borders at the G7, or maybe even inviting me here to the La Maison Blanche in the next few months.
If we have updates to share on additional individual leaders that he will be meeting with or meetings that he'll have during his trip, we'll be sure to give you an update on that. But with respect to whether it's the French president or any other head of government, the president looks forward to reasserting America's role in the world and reestablishing some of the relationships. And I think what you've seen so far, whether it's President Xi or Prime Minister Abe or other individuals, as you can see by the week that we're having this week with the UAE, Turkey, Colombia, the president has made it very clear that he is going to do everything he can to reestablish relationships around the globe to help protect and advance our national interests.
And this is a special one.
There are also, I mean, look, I agree. Right.
Republican.
I understand. There is a lot of relationships that the president wants to strengthen for the good of this country. John.
Thank you, Sean. Two brief questions. First, there are reports, and it may be confirmed by now, that Mrs. Callista Gingrich will be the third woman to be U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. Official?
Nothing's official until it's announced.
Has her name been vetted with the Vatican?
I'm not going to. That's a nice back try, but I'm not going to. The answer is we have no personnel announcements.
The other question is not related to personnel, but process with the FBI director. Sarah spoke last week about an interim or acting director of the FBI, but with the interviews that you described with the Department of Justice, can we expect that the name who is nominated for the position from that podium will be for permanent director and promptly submitted to the Senate?
That's what I believe the president's expectation is, yes.
So no interim or acting?
Well, I mean, you have an acting now until someone's selected, but the reason that the president's team is going through this process is to select the next director. Mara.
I know this isn't on the front burner right now, but I have actually the healthcare question.
Okay.
As it goes to the Senate, I'm wondering if the president's negotiating strategy will change. Does he want to get involved earlier? Does he want to wait till the Senate kind of comes up with something? Does he have anything in particular he wants them to keep from the House bill, get rid of from the House bill? What's his approach to this new chapter in the AHA-CA repeal process?
Well, I think he feels very strong about the product that came out of the House, but he recognizes that the Senate has a duty to review it and to come up with ideas, and if it can be made stronger, then great. He's continued to have conversations with members of the Senate. His staff has had them as well. Our legislative team and others are in communication with the Senate, and we'll continue to work with them. But obviously, they're an independent body; they have a right to go through their own process. But if we can make the bill stronger in any particular way, that's something that he'll support.
But he kind of came in at the end to kind of close the deal in the House. Does he want to get involved more in the earlier stages of the process in the Senate, or just stick with the same negotiating strategy?
I think that the team has been intricately involved in the process for quite some time, and the president, by several accounts, was involved in a way that people hadn't seen on Capitol Hill in a long, long time. Jill.
Two things. Just going back to the FBI director search, should we expect the president to begin interviewing personally the short list before he leaves on the trip?
I think that's going to be driven by the Department of Justice. And as soon as the Department of Justice has a recommendation for the president, then we'll move on. But at this time, there's no update on where that is.
And then I want to go back to, you started off with Syria there. The State Department today, of course, announced that the Syrian government has apparently been carrying out mass killings, burning thousands of prisoners. I'm wondering if that crosses any kind of red line for the president, and whether we should expect to see any kind of military response to that.
Well, the president's always been clear that he's not going to telegraph actions that he takes. So that's number one. Number two is, I think what was important about what the State Department did today was to really enumerate the atrocities and the human rights violations that have been committed, and then further ask the world community to join with us to put pressure on Syria.
Should we expect any direct action by the president?
I don't think the president's made clear over and over again that he doesn't telegraph his actions. He's going to be continuing to raise this issue, but when he's ready to act, he'll let everyone know. Jen.
When it comes to vetting for the FBI director, after the experience with Michael Flynn, is the White House recommending doing anything differently with vetting the FBI director? Are you already doing something different with that vetting?
I'm not going to get into internal processes that exist, but obviously, we will you'd have the full resources of the FBI. So I'm not going to get into how that process is handled. I'm not going to get into the processes of how that's being done.
Sean?
Yeah.
Okay. Two questions. One to follow up on Hadley's question. How has the president made it clear what his position is on
Yeah,
the
I've answered that several times.
How has he made it clear? All I've seen is the tweet.
Right. So that's his position. He said that he has nothing further to add.
Okay, but he had tapes and
Caitlin,
quotes.
I understand.
Okay, I just wanted
There's
to get a
nothing further to
clarification
add on
on
that.
My second question is, has he made any other inquiries about the Russia investigation to any other FBI officials?
I don't, not that. I haven't asked him about that, but I'm not aware of anything.
Okay, and one small follow-up. Last week you said you would get back to us on who requested the dinner between him and Comey.
I still don't. I apologize. I will follow up on that today. I think one of the things that's important with respect to that, just to clear something up, I think that there was clearly bipartisan support that Jim Comey wasn't up to the job. The president has every right to fire a person because he believed Director Comey lacked the judgment and the decision-making skills and wasn't up to the job. The president's reaction to this, to what his position has been completely misrepresented. If you think about what he said to NBC News, he said, one, he didn't care that this action would make matters worse for him, that it, quote, might even lengthen out the investigation because he would take action against Jim Comey and firing him. He said that he wants the investigation to be done, quote, absolutely properly. And he said that he might even confuse some people that he would take this action knowing it would make matters worse for him. The actions that he took, he knew could be detrimental to himself, but none of those things mattered because the president had to do the right thing for the American people because he believes that Jim Comey was the wrong man for that position. And I think that we've got to be very clear as to the reason that the president took the actions that he did. He knew that what he did could be detrimental to himself. It could lengthen the investigation, but he knew it was the right thing for the country, the right thing for the FBI, and the right thing to get to the bottom of this.
Why do you believe Comey was the wrong person for the American people?
Because he didn't have the leadership skills necessary to lead that institution. And as he said in the statement at the time, the FBI is the crown jewel of law enforcement, and they deserve a leader that can properly lead the institution. Thank you guys very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Give us a special prosecutor.
So that will do it for the White House press briefing. Guys, if you're joining us on Facebook, leave your comments below. Tell us what you think. We heard from Tom Bossert, the Homeland Security Advisor, first on the ransomware incident from earlier yesterday and today, the cybersecurity attack, and the call to action to globally fight future cybersecurity attacks. And then, of course, Sean Spicer talking more about the firing of James Comey and reminding us that President Trump takes his first international trip, his foreign trip to the Middle East on Friday. Let us know what you think, guys. Stay tuned to our Facebook page for more updates and breaking news. All right, guys, and if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for joining us on our stream. We'll finish it out there with the White House press briefing today, but we want to thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to click subscribe on the page so you can see when we pop up and bring you live breaking news and events throughout the day on this midday show, Fox 5 Live. That's going to do it for us, guys. I'm Molly Nevola here in Washington, D.C. with our digital newsroom. We'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. Don't forget to follow us here on YouTube and on our Facebook page for continued updates on all our breaking news and web stories. We're going to roll out with that. I'll bring you a shot of the Capitol. Have a great day, guys.